I
We
am
cannot
Samuel
afford to
Washington,
wait any
75
longer.
years old,
The market
and I
demands
never thought the
action,
worst
and we must
betrayal of my
respond
life would happen while
decisively
machines
now
were keeping
before
me
it's too
alive.
late.
As a third-generation farmer who built an empire from Georgia red clay, I survived Jim Crow economic crashes and every obstacle this country threw at black men like me. But nothing prepared me for what my own daughter-in-law would do while I lay dying. Last month, my family invited me to what they called a routine checkup at Atlanta Medical Center. Between blood pressure readings and EKG tests, my cardiologist leaned forward, frowning. "Samuel, your heart is failing. We need to operate immediately." Emergency surgery was scheduled for September 15th. That morning, my son Lawrence drove me to the hospital in silence, gripping the steering wheel like it might disappear. His wife Ashley sat in the back seat, scrolling through her phone. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had family who smiled to your face while plotting behind your back. September 15th, 2024, room 314 at Atlanta Medical Center. I came out of a heart procedure that nearly killed me. The surgeon said I flatlined twice on the table. My son Lawrence was pacing the hallway outside, worried sick about whether his old man would make it through. And there was Ashley, my daughter-in-law, sitting in the corner with her iPhone 15 Pro Max filming herself. "Day 3 of freedom from the hood," she whispered to her camera, adjusting her ring light for better angles. "Walter is finally unconscious, so we can talk about upgrading our lives. No more pretending to respect that ghetto farm. No more Sunday dinners in that rundown kitchen. Finally, we can be honest about what that place really is. A poverty trap." I kept my eyes closed. Let her think the anesthesia still had me under. She had no idea the monitors were showing my heart rate spiking, that I could hear every single word. The nurses would check on me soon, but for now, I was alone with the sound of my daughter-in-law destroying me for internet strangers. She aimed the camera at my hospital bed, making sure I was visible in the background, tubes and wires everywhere. "Look at this, y'all. This is what happens when you refuse to evolve. 75 years old and still clinging to that farm like it is 1952. My husband thinks this is noble. I think it is pathetic." Her voice dropped lower, more conspiratorial. "But here is the thing. Once he is gone or too sick to fight us, that farm is ours. 180 acres in Greene County. We already talked to a realtor. Cash offer, fast close. Then we can finally live like normal people." What she did not know about our worthless farm was about to change everything for her and her family. But I am getting ahead of myself. You need to understand how we got here. Ashley Crawford married my son Lawrence 3 years ago in the fall of 2021. The wedding was at some fancy venue in Buckhead, all white roses and champagne fountains. Her family, the Crawfords, came from what they called old money. Her father Richard used to brag about their vineyard in Napa Valley before the 2008 crash took everything. They lost it all, but Ashley never stopped acting like royalty in exile. From the very first time she visited our farm, I knew there would be trouble. Our place sits on 180 acres in Greene County, Georgia, about an hour east of Atlanta. Been in the Washington family since 1952, when my father bought it with money he saved from years of sharecropping. The red barn is older than most buildings in town. The farmhouse built in 1955, same year I was born. Nothing fancy, just home. Ashley saw it differently. "This is not a home," she told Lawrence after their first overnight visit, loud enough for me to hear from the porch. "It is a poverty shrine, like a museum exhibit of everything black families need to escape." She came from money that vanished, but she never stopped performing wealth. She drove an $89,000 BMW X7 pearl white with cream leather interior. Meanwhile, I drove my 1988 Ford F-150 Forest Green with rust spots on the fender worth maybe $7,800 on a generous day. She carried Gucci bags that cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. I wore Carhartt work jackets, $89 each, that lasted me 20 years. She got her nails done every 2 weeks at some salon in Midtown. I kept my hands rough and calloused from actual work. The differences did not bother me. What bothered me was how she weaponized those differences for her social media following. The campaign started small, innocent even. Instagram stories about visiting the countryside, TikTok videos about rural life adventures, always with that condescending smile like she was documenting a zoo exhibit. My black father-in-law still lives like it is the 1960s. She giggled to her followers, filming our kitchen with its older appliances. Literally no Wi-Fi, no smart home devices, nothing. It is like stepping into a time capsule of systematic poverty. The comments ate it up. Girl, you are slumming it. How do you even survive out there without Starbucks? That is not rustic, that is just sad. Does he even have running water? 6 months into the marriage, her tone shifted from amused to cruel. She posted a video titled "Why Some Families Stay Poor, a Personal Story," and it went viral. 2.1 million views in 3 days. In it, she walked through our living room pointing at furniture my father had built by hand. "Generational poverty in the black community is real, y'all," she said, zooming in on our family photos on the mantle. "This is what happens when families accept limitation instead of pushing for more. Look at this place. Everything is from the 70s. The couch has permanent impressions. The carpet is worn through in places. This is not humble living. This is giving up." She filmed herself in our kitchen opening cabinets to show our everyday dishes. "These are the same plates Samuel has been using since before I was born. Not because they have sentimental value, because he refuses to buy new ones, refuses to believe he deserves better." That is the poverty mindset right there. It is not about money. It is about believing you are worth more than scraps. Her follower count exploded. 47,000 became 82,000, then hit 127,000 by the end of the year. Brand partnerships started rolling in. Skincare companies wanting to sponsor her authentic lifestyle content. Fashion brands sending her free clothes to wear while documenting real America. She was making more money mocking my life than most people earned in actual jobs. The worst video came in August, 3 weeks before my surgery. She stood on our front porch at sunset golden hour lighting, making everything look deliberately poor. I have been documenting this for months now, and I need to be honest with you all. My father-in-law represents everything about generational poverty that keeps black families trapped. He has owned this land for decades but refuses to modernize, refuses to see opportunities, refuses to admit the world moved on without him. And my husband Lawrence, he grew up thinking this was success, thinking this was black excellence. It is not. It is learned helplessness. It is the poverty mindset that gets passed down like a family curse. The comment section became a battlefield. Half the people defended us, calling her disrespectful and entitled. The other half joined her mockery, sharing their own stories about backwards relatives who refuse to evolve. Local news picked it up. Georgia farm family becomes unlikely social media stars. That is when I knew she was planning something bigger, something that would force my hand. The cruelest conversation happened on September 18th, 3 days after my surgery. I was lying in that hospital bed, machines beeping around me in a steady rhythm that should have been comforting, but just reminded me how close I had come to dying. The doctors said I needed at least 2 weeks of recovery before going home. Lawrence visited every morning before work, bringing me newspapers and sweet tea. Ashley came too, but only when other people were around, performing the role of concerned daughter-in-law for the nurses. That afternoon I was alone. The TV was on low volume, some judge show I was not really watching. My phone sat on the bedside table, and that is when I heard Ashley's voice coming from the hallway outside my room, crystal clear, confident, talking to someone. At first I thought she was on a video call with her followers doing another poverty update from the hospital, but then I caught the words property listing and my blood pressure monitor started climbing. I grabbed my phone as quietly as I could, opened the voice recorder app and hit record. Then I closed my eyes and kept perfectly still, letting her think I was unconscious or asleep or too medicated to notice anything. "Hi, this is Ashley Crawford, Washington, calling about the property listing we discussed last week. Yes, the farm in Greene County. I am calling with an update." Her voice was all business now, none of the bubbly influencer energy she used for her videos. "My father-in-law is incapacitated right now. He had major heart surgery 3 days ago, and honestly, the prognosis is not great. The doctors are saying full recovery could take months if it happens at all, so we need to move quickly while he cannot interfere with the sale." I felt my chest tighten, and not from the surgery. This woman was plotting to sell my land while I was barely out of the operating room, and she was doing it like it was normal business. The realtor must have asked about the asking price because Ashley laughed that practiced laugh she used when she wanted to sound reasonable. Well, the property appraiser said $880,000 for the whole package. Land house, all the outbuildings. I know it seems low for 180 acres, but honestly, this place represents everything backwards about America. Old black farmers hoarding land while young families struggle to find affordable property. We are actually doing the community a service by selling. My finger gripped the phone tighter. She kept talking, pacing now. I could hear her heels clicking on the hospital's linoleum floor. "Samuel Washington. He is 75, and let me be completely honest with you, he has no business sense whatsoever. None. The man has been farming the same plot since the 1970s, like it is still the civil rights era. No modernization, no efficiency, no vision for growth. He still handwrites his accounting and actual ledger books. Can you believe that in 2024 he is doing math with a pencil like some sharecropper from his grandfather's generation? The realtor said something I could not hear, probably asking about me specifically or about legal authority to sell. Listen, between you and me, I am doing society a favor getting this property developed. Greene County needs progress, not some stubborn old man's vanity project. Samuel is basically holding back the entire area. Property values are depressed because people drive by and see this rundown farm and think the whole county is poor. Meanwhile, we could turn this into something useful. Housing development, commercial property, anything productive. She paused, probably checking to make sure no nurses were nearby. The timing is perfect, actually. Samuel will be in recovery for weeks, maybe months. And honestly, at his age, with his health problems, he might not be making decisions much longer anyway. I know that sounds harsh, but it is reality. His son Lawrence has legal power of attorney for medical and financial decisions. I just need to convince him that selling is the compassionate choice. Get Samuel into a nice assisted living facility where he does not have to worry about property taxes and maintenance and all that stress. Let him retire for real. My heart rate monitor was spiking now. The nurses would probably come check on me soon, but I needed to hear the rest of this. You want to know the funniest part? Samuel thinks he is some kind of successful businessman. The man drives a truck older than my little sister. He wears the same 3 flannel shirts year-round, rotates them like a cartoon character. He lives like he is afraid to spend a single dollar, like money is going to disappear if he enjoys any of it. If that is success, I will take failure any day. The realtor must have asked about neighborhood interest or comparable sales because Ashley's voice got animated, excited even. The neighbors will thank us. Everyone is tired of looking at that eyesore. Peeling paint on the barn, broken fencing everywhere, rusty equipment scattered around like a junkyard. It is dragging down property values for half a mile in every direction. This is not a farm. It is a hood museum, literally a monument to staying stuck in the past. She walked closer to my door. I could see her shadow under the crack. Now here is what really kills me. I married into this family thinking there was hidden wealth somewhere. You know how they say farmers are land rich? Well, turns out some farmers are just land poor. Really, really poor. Samuel has maybe $50,000 in the bank on a good day. No investments, no retirement fund worth mentioning, no stocks, no bonds. Just dirt. Hundreds of acres of dirt that he is too stubborn to monetize. Another pause. I heard her typing on her phone. My parents think I am crazy for staying this long, and honestly, they are right. I have got brand partnerships now, real opportunities in Atlanta. But I cannot build an influencer career from a farm in nowhere, Georgia. This place represents everything I am trying to escape, everything I am teaching my followers to avoid. The poverty mindset, the acceptance of less, the refusal to demand better. The realtor said something about paperwork and timelines. Lawrence will sign. He has to. I have been showing him the numbers for months. We are bleeding money every month keeping this place running. Property taxes alone are killing us. Equipment maintenance, seed costs, all of it. It is like pouring money into a black hole just so Samuel can pretend he is still relevant. Pretend he is still the successful farmer he thinks he is. She was walking away now, voice getting fainter. You want the real truth? Samuel Washington is everything wrong with his generation. Too proud to admit the world passed him by. Too stubborn to accept help. Too stuck in his ways to see that change is not failure. This sale is not just good business. It is mercy. Mercy for him, mercy for us, mercy for this whole county. The call ended. Ashley walked back into my room, sat down in the visitor chair, and immediately started scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. Like she had not just spent 10 minutes plotting to steal my life's work while I lay 20 feet away. If only she knew who she was really talking about. If only she understood what she had just done. I kept that recording safe, every word documented, every insult preserved, every racial assumption captured. Because Ashley Crawford Washington had no idea she just declared war on the wrong farmer. I had exactly 72 hours before discharge. 72 hours to decide how this would end. October 5th, Ashley's biggest mistake yet. I was back home recovering in my bedroom upstairs, still weak but getting stronger every day. Lawrence brought me lunch on a tray, homemade soup and cornbread. He seemed distracted, kept checking his phone with this worried look on his face. "Dad, you need to see this now." He held up his screen and there it was. TikTok video. 3.6 million views and climbing. The title read, "Escaping the Cycle, Breaking Generational Poverty in Black Families." My stomach dropped before I even pressed play. The video opened with Ashley standing in our living room wearing a $2,300 cashmere sweater, cream-colored and pristine. She looked like money, and that was exactly the point. Behind her, our furniture looked deliberately shabby in the afternoon light streaming through the windows. "Y'all, I have been documenting generational poverty for months now," she said to the camera. Her voice taking on that serious tone influencers use when they want you to think they are being real. But today I want to talk about something deeper, the cycle, the mindset that keeps Black families trapped in the same patterns for generations. She walked over to our mantel where family photos sat in simple frames. 4 generations of Washington men, she said, pointing at pictures of my father, my grandfather, me and Lawrence. 4 generations who never left this farm, never aspired to anything bigger, never questioned whether there might be a better way. She picked up a photo of my father from 1955 standing proud in front of the barn he built with his own hands. "This is Samuel's father. Bought this land in 1952, and you know what? Nothing has changed since then. Same land, same mindset, same acceptance of limitation." The camera followed her around our living room in a slow pan. "Look at this place," she continued. "Furniture from the 80s, carpet with stains that will never come out, walls that have not seen fresh paint since before I was born. This is not humble living, y'all. This is not choosing simplicity. This is giving up. This is what happens when you accept that your circumstances define your worth." She moved into the kitchen, opening our refrigerator like she was a detective revealing evidence. "Generic brands," she said, holding up a store-brand milk carton. "Everything is store-brand. Not because they cannot afford name brands. Samuel owns 180 acres of land, free and clear. But because they have convinced themselves that spending money is wasteful, that wanting nice things is selfish, that aspiring to more is somehow betraying their roots." My hands were shaking as I watched. Lawrence sat beside me on the bed, his jaw clenched. Ashley picked up one of my farming magazines from the kitchen table. "Samuel reads these agriculture journals like they are scripture," she told her millions of followers, "studying soil composition and crop rotation like it is 1952 all over again." Meanwhile, the world has moved on. Tech entrepreneurs are creating generational wealth. Young Black professionals are breaking into industries their grandparents never dreamed of. And Samuel is out there planting the same crops his father planted 70 years ago. The video cut to her sitting at my desk in the corner of the living room, the wooden desk my father made. She opened one of my ledger books showing the camera rows of my handwriting. "Look at this. Handwritten accounting." He still does his bookkeeping with pencil and paper. Will not even use Excel. Claims computers are not reliable. Can you believe that? She laughed, shaking her head. This is what learned helplessness looks like in action. This is the poverty mindset that gets passed down like DNA. She stood up and faced the camera directly, her expression shifting to something like pity. "My husband Lawrence grew up in this house. Grew up thinking this was what Black success looked like. Hard work, owning land, keeping your head down, and never asking for too much. And I am not going to lie, when I first met his family, I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was noble. But the more time I spent here, the more I realized the truth. This is not Black excellence. This is survival mode that never ended. This is the trauma response of a generation that was told to be grateful for scraps, and they believed it so deeply they taught their children to be grateful for scraps too." The camera zoomed in on her face, and she got quiet, serious. "Lawrence is an amazing man, smart, kind, hard-working, but his father's mindset is toxic. It is contagious. Samuel would rather repair a 40-year-old tractor for the 100th time than admit he should upgrade, rather patch holes in a barn roof than build something modern. And it is not about the money. I have seen the bank statements. It is about identity. He is afraid that changing anything means admitting his whole life was a mistake." She walked toward the front door, the camera following her. But here's the thing, y'all. Generational poverty is not just about money. It is about vision. It is about believing you deserve better. And I am not going to let my future Black children inherit this limitation. I am not going to let them grow up thinking that staying small is the same as staying humble. The video ended with her getting into her BMW designer bag visible on the passenger seat. The final text overlay read, Breaking cycles starts with breaking silence. Follow me for more real talk about generational wealth and escaping limitation. Hashtag generational wealth. Hashtag breaking cycles. Hashtag black families. Hashtag authentic living. I set the phone down on my lap. 3.6 million people had watched my daughter-in-law diagnose my entire life as a failure. 3.6 million people heard her use my blackness, my family's history, my father's struggles as content, as a cautionary tale. But something was shifting in the comments. Lawrence scrolled down to show me. Girl, you are wearing a $2,000 sweater while calling them poor. Someone explain how that math works. Another one. If they are so broke, how does she afford that car and those clothes on a farmer's income? Here is a good one. Something is not adding up. This whole story feels performative. I looked at my son. His eyes were wet angry. Dad, I am so sorry. I should have stopped this months ago. Lawrence, I said quietly, I have been letting her dig her own grave. Now she is in deep enough. Time to show her how far she has to climb back out. Let me tell you what Ashley did not know. What she could not have known because I built my empire the way my father taught me. Quietly, carefully, without flash or announcement. In 1975, I bought my first property outside the family farm. I was 20 years old, fresh out of the Army, working the land during the day and taking business classes at night at the local community college. A house came up for sale in town, a small, two-bedroom place that had been foreclosed after the owner died with no heirs. The bank wanted it gone fast. I paid $8,500 cash money I had saved from my military service and 3 years of selling crops at the farmer's market. That house became my template. I fixed it up myself, new roof, fresh paint, working plumbing. Then I rented it out to a young black family who had been denied mortgages by every bank in the county. They paid me $350 a month, which was fair and affordable for them and enough for me to save toward the next property. By 1980, I owned 4 rental houses. By 1990, I had 12. Today, I own 28 residential properties across Greene County, Hancock County, and parts of Putnam County. Those 28 properties are worth $16.8 million according to the most recent assessment. Every single one provides affordable housing to black families, working-class families, people who got told no by banks that did not see them as worthy investments. My monthly rental income averages $68,000, and I have never raised rent more than 3% in any given year, even when the market said I could charge double. Ashley thought she was looking at a poverty museum. She was actually standing inside the headquarters of Washington Properties, LLC, the largest black-owned rental company in East Georgia. But real estate was just the beginning. In 1982, I started Washington Organic Farms, LLC, not just growing cotton and peanuts like my father did, though I still plant some for tradition. I pivoted to organic produce, specialty crops, heirloom vegetables that restaurants in Atlanta were desperate to source locally. I was one of the first black farmers in Georgia to get certified organic back when people thought it was a hippie trend that would disappear. It did not disappear. It exploded. By 1995, I had contracts with small co-ops and health food stores. By 2005, I was supplying Whole Foods locations across the Southeast. By 2015, Trader Joe's came calling wanting Georgia peaches, heirloom tomatoes, and organic greens. Today, Washington Organic Farms has direct contracts with 17 major grocery chains. We supply produce to 432 stores across 8 states. Our monthly revenue averages $310,000. That is what those poor dirt fields generate every single month and have been for the past decade. The organic farming operation was valued at $42 million in our most recent business assessment conducted by an independent firm out of Atlanta that specializes in agricultural enterprises. Ashley tried to sell a farm for $880,000. She was actually trying to sell a $42 million agricultural empire that feeds thousands of families every week. Let me break down what she did not see because she was too busy filming content about my generic brand milk and old furniture. The barn she called an eyesore, that is a 15,000 square foot processing and storage facility with climate-controlled sections, commercial-grade refrigeration, and loading docks that handle 6 deliveries per week. The rusty equipment she mocked, those are vintage tractors I keep for sentimental reasons. My actual farming equipment stored in the newer barn she never bothered to walk to includes 2 John Deere combines from 2019, a fleet of modern irrigation systems and precision agriculture technology that monitors soil conditions in real time through satellite data. The farmhouse she called a poverty shrine. Paid off in 1978. No mortgage, no debt, just a roof over my head that cost me nothing but property taxes. The furniture she filmed, most of it handmade by my father, worth more in craftsmanship and history than anything she could buy at her fancy stores. The generic brand products in my refrigerator. A choice, not a necessity. I buy store brands because the quality is identical, and I would rather invest the difference in my business or donate it to families who actually need help. My 1988 Ford F-150 that she loves to mock, I could buy 10 new trucks tomorrow and not notice the dent in my bank account. I keep it because it runs perfectly, because I maintained it properly, and because I do not need a luxury vehicle to prove my worth to strangers. That truck has hauled more produce, helped more neighbors, and covered more honest miles than her BMW ever will. But here is the part that was about to destroy her world completely. The part that made everything else look small by comparison. 3 years ago, when Ashley's parents, Richard and Patricia Crawford, lost their savings in a bad investment and needed work, who do you think quietly hired them? Richard Crawford became golf course manager at Magnolia Hills Country Club in the spring of 2021. Salary, $64,000 per year, plus benefits and housing allowance. Patricia Crawford got hired as events coordinator at the same club 2 months later. Salary, $48,000 per year, same benefits package. They never knew their real employer. All the hiring went through management companies. All the paychecks came from corporate accounts with names like MH Management Group and Southern Hospitality Staffing. But every single dollar of their combined income for the past 3 years, every health insurance payment, every retirement contribution, every holiday bonus, came from businesses I own. The country club itself, I bought Magnolia Hills in 2020 when the previous owners defaulted on their loans during the pandemic. Purchase price, $3.8 million cash. I own the golf course, the restaurant, the event spaces, the spa, everything. It generates about $90,000 per month in revenue, mostly from membership fees and event bookings. The Crawfords work for me. They have worked for me since the day they got hired. They just did not know it. And it gets better. Ashley's grandmother, Barbara Crawford, lives in Sunset Manor Assisted Living, one of the nicest facilities in the county. Private room, garden views, full-time nursing staff. The cost, $3,400 per month. Who has been paying that bill since 2020? The Washington Family Foundation, a charitable organization I established in 1998. We have quietly covered Barbara's care for 4 years. Total contribution, $163,200. Ashley's younger sister teaches 3rd grade at Riverside Academy, a private school that serves mostly black and brown students from working-class families. The school stays affordable because it receives a $125,000 annual grant from the Washington Family Foundation, a grant that has been renewed every year since 2018. We fund scholarships, supply budgets, teacher salaries. Ashley's sister has a job in part because of money I donate. Even the luxury apartment where Ashley and Lawrence live, the one with the fancy lobby and the rooftop pool that she loves to film for her Instagram stories. Washington Properties LLC bought that building in 2022 when the previous owner went bankrupt. 24 units, worth about $4.2 million. They pay $2,800 a month in rent. To me, they are literally my tenants. For 3 years, Ashley's entire family has been surviving on my money, living in my properties, benefiting from my businesses and my charity. While she made TikToks mocking my poverty, calling me ghetto trash, diagnosing my generational helplessness, filming my generic groceries as evidence of failure. The total, let me add it up for you. 28 rental properties, $16.8 million. Washington Organic Farms, $42 million. Magnolia Hills Country Club, $3.8 million. Riverside Academy Building, which I also own, $2.1 million. Various other commercial properties and investments, $4.7 million. Grand total, $58.4 million. That is what the 75-year-old black man in the old truck and the Carhartt jacket built over 5 decades of quiet work. That is what Ashley saw as a poverty museum. That is what she tried to sell for $880,000 while I was recovering from surgery. But I was not ready to reveal any of this yet. Strategic patience, that is what my father taught me after he survived Jim Crow and built this farm from nothing. Let your enemies defeat themselves, Samuel. Give them enough rope. Then step aside and watch them hang themselves with it. So I made my decision lying in that hospital bed. I would let Ashley continue her campaign. Let her post more videos. Let her dig deeper into her own grave with every hashtag, every brand partnership, every condescending word about generational poverty in black families. Let her feel confident, secure, untouchable. And then when she was at her highest point, when she felt most successful and vindicated, I would show her what real power looked like. I would teach her that wealth has nothing to do with what you display, and everything to do with what you build when nobody is watching. The charity gala was exactly 30 days away. October 12th. Perfect timing. Remember when I said Ashley's parents work for me? Let me tell you exactly how deep that connection goes, because it is about to get uncomfortable for everyone involved. Magnolia Hills Country Club sits on 72 acres of pristine Georgia landscape about 15 miles from my farm. Rolling fairways, a clubhouse built in 1968 with that old Southern charm tennis courts, a pool, and a restaurant that serves Sunday brunch to the county's wealthiest families. For decades, it was the place to be if you had money and status. Membership cost $12,000 per year, and the waiting list stayed full. Then 2020 happened. The pandemic shut everything down. Weddings canceled, golf tournaments postponed, the restaurant closed for months. The owners, a family named Morrison, who had run the place since the 80s, had taken out massive loans to renovate the clubhouse in 2019. When revenue disappeared overnight, they could not make the payments. By November 2020, the bank had foreclosed and put the entire property up for auction. I bought it for $3.8 million cash. Outbid two developers from Atlanta who wanted to turn it into a housing subdivision. The bank was thrilled to have a local buyer, someone who promised to keep it as a country club and preserve jobs. I signed the papers through Washington Holdings, LLC, kept all the existing staff, and promoted the assistant manager to general manager. Business as usual, just under new ownership that nobody needed to know about. In March 2021, the club needed a new golf course manager. The previous one had retired to Florida. My general manager posted the position, and Richard Crawford applied. His resume showed 15 years of experience managing courses in California before the 2008 crash destroyed his finances. He was qualified, desperate for work, and willing to relocate to Georgia, where his daughter had recently married. Perfect fit. Richard got hired at $64,000 per year, plus full benefits, health insurance, and a housing allowance of $800 per month. He reports to the general manager, attends staff meetings, supervises the grounds crew, and has no idea that the corporate entity signing his paychecks is owned by his daughter's father-in-law, the man she calls ghetto trash on the internet. 2 months later, we needed an events coordinator, someone to manage weddings, corporate functions, fundraising, galas. Patricia Crawford applied. She had experience in hospitality and event planning from her vineyard days. She interviewed well, had great references, understood how to deal with high-maintenance clients. She got hired at $48,000 per year, same benefits package as her husband. For 3 years, Richard and Patricia Crawford have worked at Magnolia Hills Country Club. 3 years of steady paychecks, health insurance that covered Patricia's thyroid medication and Richard's blood pressure prescriptions, retirement contributions that rebuilt the savings they lost in California. 3 years of financial stability that let them sleep at night, that let them help their daughter with her influencer career expenses, that let them feel like they had recovered from their losses. Combined salary over 3 years, $336,000. Every single dollar came from my business. Every health insurance claim processed through policies I pay for. Every retirement contribution deposited into accounts funded by my profits. They had no idea. The whole system was designed so they would never know. All corporate communications came from management companies with generic names. All checks bore the logo of MH Management Group, a subsidiary I created specifically to handle staffing. When they cashed those checks, when they swiped their health insurance cards, when they checked their retirement account balances, they saw corporate names, not Samuel Washington. And they certainly never connected the dots that the old black farmer their daughter mocked online was the reason they could afford their lives. But it gets deeper than employment. Let me tell you about Barbara. Barbara Crawford is Ashley's grandmother, Patricia's mother. She is 87 years old now, sharp as ever mentally but physically frail. She needs full-time care assistance with daily activities, medication management, the kind of support that costs real money. In 2020, right after Richard and Patricia moved to Georgia, Barbara's health declined rapidly. She could not live alone anymore. The family looked into assisted living facilities and nearly had heart attacks at the prices. The nice places, the ones with private rooms and actual dignity, cost between $4,000 and $5,000 per month. Barbara's Social Security covered maybe a third of that. Richard and Patricia, still recovering from their financial collapse, could not afford to cover the rest. Medicaid would only pay for county facilities, the kind where residents share rooms and the smell of institutional food never quite leaves the hallways. That is when the social worker at Sunset Manor called Patricia with surprising news. Your mother has been approved for a special assistance program through the Washington Family Foundation. They will cover the difference between her Social Security and our monthly rate. Barbara could have a private room with a garden view at Sunset Manor, the nicest facility in Greene County. The foundation would pay $3,400 per month, and all Patricia had to worry about was visiting regularly and staying involved in care decisions. Patricia cried with relief. She never asked too many questions about the foundation, just felt grateful that some charitable organization saw her mother as worthy of help. She had no idea that I established the Washington Family Foundation in 1998, that I personally review every funding request, that I approved Barbara's assistance within 24 hours of receiving the application. $3,400 per month for 48 months equals $163,200. That is how much I have spent keeping Ashley's grandmother in comfort and dignity, while Ashley made videos about my poverty mindset and generational helplessness. The foundation does more than just help Barbara, though. Let me tell you about Riverside Academy. Riverside Academy is a private school that opened in 2015, created specifically to serve Black and brown students from working-class families who were underserved by the public school system. Small class sizes, experienced teachers, a curriculum that included Black history and cultural education. The tuition was set deliberately low, about $6,000 per year, which is affordable for many working families, but nowhere near enough to cover actual operating costs. The school survives on grants and donations. The Washington Family Foundation contributes $125,000 every year, renewed annually since 2018. That money funds teacher salaries, classroom supplies, technology upgrades, field trips. Without it, the school would have to either raise tuition or cut staff. Ashley's younger sister, Emily Crawford, teaches third grade at Riverside Academy. She got hired in 2019, fresh out of her teaching program, idealistic and excited to work with underserved students. Her salary is $41,000 per year, which is decent for a teacher in Georgia, especially at a small private school. What Emily does not know is that roughly 30% of her paycheck comes from grant money I provide. She teaches Black children using resources I fund in a building I helped keep open, while her sister makes content about how Black families like mine choose poverty. The irony would be funny if it were not so devastating. And then there is the apartment. Ashley and Lawrence live in a luxury building called Park Vista Heights in downtown Athens, about 30 minutes from the farm. Floor-to-ceiling windows, rooftop pool, fitness center, secured parking. The kind of place young professionals post about on Instagram to prove they have made it. Their unit is on the 8th floor, 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, hardwood floors, granite countertops, monthly rent $2,800. What they do not know is that Washington Properties LLC bought Park Vista Heights in October 2022 when the previous owner, a real estate investment firm from Atlanta, defaulted on their loan during a market downturn. I paid $4.2 million for the building, 24 units total, fully occupied. The property generates about $82,000 per month in rental income. Ashley and Lawrence are my tenants. They have been for almost 2 years. Every month they transfer $2,800 into an account managed by a property management company that handles leasing and maintenance. That money flows through 2 subsidiary companies before landing in Washington Properties LLC accounts. They have no idea their rent checks are coming to me. Think about what this means. Ashley lives in my building, parks her BMW in my garage, uses my rooftop pool to film content for her followers, complains to my property manager when the hot water takes too long or the elevator is slow, all while calling me poor, all while making videos about how I represent everything wrong with Black families. So let me add this up one more time just so it is clear. Richard's salary, $192,000 over 3 years. Patricia's salary $144,000 over 3 years. Barbara's care $163,200 over 4 years. Emily's portion of salary from my grant approximately $37,000 over 4 years. Rent from Ashley and Lawrence $67,200 over 2 years. Total financial support to the Crawford family, direct and indirect, over the past 4 years, $603,400. More than $500,000. From the ghetto farmer, from the poverty museum curator, from the man who represents generational helplessness in the Black community. Ashley built her entire influencer brand on mocking my failure while living entirely on my success. She taught millions of people that Black farmers like me are the problem while I was literally keeping her entire family afloat. She used my Blackness, my history, my father's struggles as content to sell skincare products and fashion brands, never knowing that every designer bag she bought was purchased with money that originated from my businesses. The whole thing was so perfectly cruelly ironic that I almost could not believe it myself. But I was not ready to reveal it yet. Strategic patience. That is what separates revenge from justice. Revenge is hot, immediate, satisfying for a moment, but ultimately empty. Justice is cold, calculated, permanent. I had 30 days until the charity gala. 30 days to prepare the documentation, organize the evidence, and set the stage for the most educational evening of Ashley Crawford Washington's life. She wanted to teach people about generational poverty. I was about to teach her about generational wealth and what it actually looks like when it is built right. I could have stopped everything immediately. One phone call to my lawyer, one conversation with Lawrence, one confrontation with Ashley, and the whole scheme would have collapsed. She would have known I was on to her. The realtor would have backed off. The sale would have died before it started, but that would have been too easy, too quick, too unsatisfying. My father taught me something during the worst years of Jim Crow, back when Black men could not look white people in the eye without risking violence when owning land as a Black farmer made you a target for jealousy and hate. He told me this story when I was 15 years old enough to understand what it meant. There was a white man in town who kept trying to buy our land, he said, kept offering pennies on the dollar, kept showing up with contracts and threats, kept telling your grandfather that a colored man had no business owning good farming soil. Your grandfather could have fought him directly, could have gone to the sheriff who would not have helped, could have made a scene that would have gotten him killed. Instead, he waited, watched, let that man borrow money against the assumption he would get our land cheap, let him overextend, overpromise, overcommit. And when the man finally ran out of credit and lost everything, your grandfather bought his equipment at auction for a fraction of what it was worth. My father paused, looking me dead in the eye. Let your enemies defeat themselves, Samuel. You do not need to destroy people who are busy destroying themselves. You just need to step aside and let gravity do the work. Then when they are at the bottom, you decide if they deserve a hand up or if they need to stay down there and learn. That lesson stayed with me for 60 years. Through business deals, through racial discrimination, through every moment when someone underestimated me because of my skin color or my quiet demeanor. I learned that patience is not weakness. It is strategy. And strategic patience always wins. So I made my decision. I would let Ashley continue. Let her post more videos. Let her dig deeper into the narrative she was building, the story about the poor Black farmer and his poverty mindset, the generational helplessness she was documenting for millions. Let her feel confident and righteous. Let her think she was doing something noble by exposing my failure. And then, at exactly the right moment, I would pull back the curtain and show her the truth. Not privately, not in some quiet family conversation where she could apologize and beg for forgiveness behind closed doors, publicly, spectacularly, in a way that would teach her and everyone watching what real consequences look like. I reached for my phone on the nightstand. First call went to Michael Stevens, my attorney. Michael handled all my corporate legal work, had been with me since 1998 when I first established the foundation. He was a Black man too, about 50 years old, sharp as a blade, understood exactly how to protect wealth in a world that did not like seeing Black people accumulate it. Michael picked up on the second ring. Samuel, how are you feeling? Heard about the surgery. Better than expected, I told him. Listen, I need you to do something for me. I need complete documentation of all my business holdings, every property deed, every corporate filing, Every contract, every financial statement. I want it organized, indexed, and ready to present. There was a pause. What is this about? My daughter-in-law is trying to sell my farm while I recover. She thinks she is stealing from a poor old man. I am going to teach her what poor actually means. Michael laughed low and knowing. Say no more. I will have everything ready by next week. You want this for legal action. Maybe eventually, I said. Right now I just want her to see what she was really trying to take. Second call went to Janet Rodriguez, my accountant. Janet was brilliant with numbers, had been handling my taxes and financial planning for 12 years. She kept my various business entities properly separated, made sure every dollar was accounted for, ensured I stayed compliant with every regulation while maximizing every legal advantage. Janet, I need a full portfolio review. Every business entity, every property, every investment account, current valuations, revenue streams, profit margins. I want a complete picture of the Washington financial empire. She did not ask why. Janet understood that when I asked for something specific, there was a reason. Give me until Monday, she said. I will send you a comprehensive report with visual aids. This for estate planning education purposes, I told her. Someone needs to learn the difference between what things look like and what things are worth. Third call was the most important. I dialed the direct line to Marcus Johnson, the general manager of Magnolia Hills Country Club. Marcus had been with the club for 18 years, worked his way up from assistant pro to general manager, was loyal and discreet, and exactly the kind of leader I wanted running the operation. Marcus, this is Samuel. I need you to schedule performance reviews for Richard and Patricia Crawford. Sure thing, he said. They are both due for annual reviews in November anyway. Want me to move them up? Yes. And Marcus, I want them conducted at the monthly staff meeting. Public reviews, full transparency. There was a long pause. That is not our usual policy, Mr. Washington. I know. New initiative. I want all staff to understand that performance and loyalty are directly tied to job security. Make it clear that employees who demonstrate discretion, professionalism, and respect for the institution will always have a place. Those who do not, well, we have policies for that. Marcus understood immediately. You want me to emphasize the social media and conduct clauses in the employee handbook. Exactly. Just a reminder that what employees do on their personal time can reflect on the club. We expect a certain standard. I will schedule it for the October staff meeting, he said. Anything else? One more thing. The annual charity gala is October 12th. I want to make sure Richard and Patricia are both there. Tell them it is mandatory for management-level staff. I want them in the room when I give my donor speech. I hung up and sat back against my pillows, feeling my heart rate settle into a steady rhythm. The machinery was in motion now. 3 phone calls and the dominoes were set up perfectly. By Monday, I would have complete documentation of my $58 million empire. By mid-October, the Crawfords would start feeling the pressure, wondering why their jobs suddenly felt less secure, why management was emphasizing conduct policies, why the foundation was sending letters about reviewing charitable commitments. They would not understand why not yet, but they would feel the ground shifting under their feet. And on October 12th, at the annual charity gala, with 380 of the county's wealthiest and most influential people watching, Ashley would learn what happens when you declare war on the wrong man, when you use someone's race and history as content, when you mock their humility while living on their generosity. I was not being cruel. I was being educational. There is a difference. Cruelty is hurting people for pleasure. Education is showing people consequences so they learn not to repeat their mistakes. Ashley needed to learn that black wealth is not always visible, that quiet success is still success, that assuming poverty based on appearance and race is both stupid and dangerous. And she needed to learn it in a way she would never forget. Strategic patience. That is what separates amateurs from masters. 30 days until the gala. 30 days for Ashley to feel secure in her plan. 30 days for me to prepare the most devastating lesson of her life. My father was right. Let your enemies defeat themselves. I was just going to provide the stage. September 23rd. I was feeling stronger well enough to walk out to the barn without getting winded. The old wooden structure smelled like it always had, like motor oil and hay and decades of honest work. My office sat in the corner, just a desk my father built in 1960 and a filing cabinet that had seen better days. Lawrence found me there around 4 in the afternoon going through ledgers like I did every month. Dad, we need to talk. He pulled up the three-legged stool I kept by the desk, the one that wobbled if you did not sit on it right. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, stress written all over his face. "Of course we do, son." I set down my pencil and gave him my full attention. "It is about Ashley, about the farm sale." He ran his hand over his face, a gesture he had done since he was a kid whenever he was overwhelmed. "She has been getting some strange reactions online. People are asking questions. What kind of questions? About our finances, about whether we are really as poor as she has been saying. Someone commented asking how we can afford her car if we are supposedly broke. Another person asked why she has designer clothes if the family is struggling. One guy even did the math on her outfits and said nothing adds up. I nodded slowly like I was considering this for the first time. Smart people, those online folks. What did Ashley say? She told them, "You are too proud to admit we need help, that you have been hiding our financial problems to protect your ego, that what looks like poverty to outsiders is actually just you refusing to modernize or accept assistance." Lawrence paused, shifting on the stool. "But Dad, I have been thinking about it too. Some things are not making sense to me either. Such as..." He gestured around the barn. "If we are so poor, how come you never ask me for money? I make $78,000 a year at the engineering firm. That is good money. I have offered to help with farm expenses a dozen times. You always say no. You always tell me you are fine. If we were really struggling the way Ashley says, would you not take help from your own son?" "Maybe I do not need help." I opened the top drawer of my desk and pulled out a folder, plain manila, nothing special about it. "Lawrence, what would you say if I told you that broken fences and old equipment are choices, not necessities?" "I would say that does not make any sense." I handed him the first document. Bank statement from Chase business account for Washington Organic Farms, LLC. The balance showed $912,455.32. Lawrence stared at the paper like it was written in a foreign language. "Dad, what is this monthly operating account?" "That is what is left after paying all expenses, all salaries, all equipment costs, all supply orders. That is the buffer I keep for emergencies and opportunities." His hands started shaking. I handed him the second statement. Washington Properties, LLC. Balance $587,320. That is rental income from 28 properties. Gets deposited monthly. I pull what I need for maintenance and improvements, the rest accumulates. Lawrence set both statements on the desk like they might catch fire. "I do not understand. If you have this kind of money, why do we live like we are poor?" I leaned back in my chair, the same chair my father sat in for 40 years before me. "Because living simply is not the same as being poor, son. Your grandmother grew up during the Depression. She taught your grandfather that flashy wealth makes you a target, especially for black families. Quiet wealth keeps you safe. Let people underestimate you. Let them think you are struggling. Then build your empire in the spaces they are not watching." I pulled out another document, this one stapled and official looking. Property deed for Magnolia Hills Country Club. Purchased October 2020 for $3.8 million. Owner listed Washington Holdings, LLC. Lawrence took it with trembling fingers. Read it once. Read it twice. Then looked up at me with wide eyes. "Dad, where do Ashley's parents work?" I waited. Let him make the connection himself. "The country club. They work at Magnolia Hills." His voice dropped to almost a whisper. "You own it. You own the country club where Richard and Patricia work. Bought it in 2020. Previous owners defaulted during the pandemic. I picked it up at auction, kept all the staff, promoted good people into management positions. Your in-laws got hired about 6 months later. They have been excellent employees. Professional, reliable, good with members. So they work for you. They have been working for you this whole time. 3 years. They do not know it, though. All the hiring goes through management companies. Their paychecks come from corporate entities with generic names. When they swipe their insurance cards or check their retirement accounts, they see company names, not Samuel Washington. The whole system is designed for discretion." Lawrence stood up from the stool, started pacing the small office. "This is insane. This is absolutely insane. Ashley has been making videos about how poor we are. Her parents have been feeling sorry for us. Probably talking about it at family dinners, probably worrying about our finances. And the whole time, the entire time, her family has been living on your money. Not just their salaries," I said quietly. I pulled out more documents. Barbara's assisted living. $163,000 over 4 years from the Washington Family Foundation. Emily's teaching salary at Riverside Academy partially funded by a grant I provide. The apartment you live in, I bought that building in 2022. You pay rent to me, son. You and Ashley are my tenants. Lawrence sat back down hard on the stool. It wobbled, but held. He put his head in his hands. Does she know any of this? Not yet. But she is about to learn. The charity gala is October 12th. I donate $100,000 every year, biggest donation of the evening. I am planning to give a very educational speech. Lawrence looked up at me and I saw something change in his face. The confusion was gone, replaced by something harder. Dad, she is my wife. I love her. But what she has been doing, the things she has said about you, about our family, about black families in general, using your race and your history to build her brand, that is not okay. That has never been okay. He was at a crossroads. Every man reaches them eventually. Moments where you choose what kind of person you are going to be. Whether you stand up for what is right even when it hurts, or whether you take the easy path and pretend you do not see the problem. I know what kind of man I want to be, he said finally. The kind who stands up for his family. The kind who does not let anyone disrespect his father, especially not using racist assumptions and stereotypes for social media clout. I smiled for the first time in days. Good answer, son. That is the right answer. What do we do now? He asked. Now we let Ashley continue digging her hole. The gala is in 3 weeks. That gives her time to feel secure, to think her plan is working, to maybe post a few more videos. And when she is at her most confident, standing in a room full of Greene County's wealthiest people at an event she thinks is her debut into high society, we show her exactly how far she has to fall. Lawrence stood up again, steadier this time. I am with you, Dad. All the way. Whatever you need me to do, I need you to act normal. Do not let her know we talked. Do not change your behavior. Let her think everything is going according to plan. Can you do that? He nodded. I can do that. And Dad, when this is over, when she knows the truth, I want you to know I am not choosing between you and her. I am choosing between right and wrong. She has been wrong. You have been more than patient. I stood up and put my hand on his shoulder. Your grandfather would be proud of you. Your great-grandfather, too. They knew what it meant to stand up for family even when the world told black men to keep their heads down and accept disrespect. Lawrence hugged me, something he had not done since he was a teenager. Thank you for building all this, he said quietly. Thank you for keeping it quiet and safe so we could grow up without targets on our backs. I understand now why you never showed off, why you let people think whatever they wanted to think. That is how we survived, I told him. That is how we thrived. Your ancestors built wealth in silence because loud wealth got black families killed. I kept that tradition because it still works. Let people see an old man in an old truck. Let them make assumptions. Then surprise them when it matters. We stood there in the barn, 4 generations of Washington men represented in that moment. My great-grandfather who survived slavery. My grandfather who survived Jim Crow. My father who survived segregation. Me who survived all the quiet discrimination that came after the laws changed, but the attitudes did not. And now Lawrence, who would carry it forward, who would teach his own children someday about building in silence and striking when necessary. 3 weeks until the gala. 3 weeks until Ashley Crawford Washington learned the most expensive lesson of her life. 3 weeks until 380 people witnessed what happens when you use race and assumption as weapons against the wrong family. Strategic patience. It was almost over. The education was about to begin. October 5th, exactly 1 week before the charity gala, Ashley posted what she thought would be her masterpiece, the video that would cement her status as a serious voice on generational poverty and social issues. She had been teasing it for days on her Instagram stories. Big announcement coming. My most vulnerable video yet. A conversation we need to have about breaking cycles. I was in the kitchen making lunch when Lawrence's phone buzzed with the notification. He looked at the screen, closed his eyes for a long moment, then handed it to me, without a word. TikTok video. Already at 200,000 views, and it had only been live for 40 minutes. The video opened with Ashley standing in our living room wearing a $2,400 Saint Laurent sweater in dove gray cashmere. I knew the price because she had posted about it 3 weeks earlier, tagged the brand, used affiliate links. The afternoon light came through the windows perfectly, making everything look both beautiful and deliberately shabby at the same time. Professional lighting, professional angles. This was not a casual post. This was produced content. Y'all, she began, her voice taking on that serious, slightly breathy tone that influencers use when they want you to know they are being real and vulnerable. I have been documenting generational poverty for months now, and the response has been incredible. But today I want to go deeper. I want to talk about something that makes people uncomfortable. The poverty mindset in the Black community and why it is so hard to break. She let that hang in the air for a moment, making sure her audience understood the weight of what she was about to say. Then she walked over to our mantle, to the family photos that had been there since I was a child. "These are the Washington men," she said, pointing at each frame. 4 generations. Samuel's great-grandfather born into slavery, his grandfather who survived Jim Crow, his father who bought this farm in 1952, and Samuel himself, 75 years old. 4 generations who never left this land. 4 generations who never questioned whether there might be a better way, a bigger opportunity, a chance to build something beyond these acres. She picked up the photo of my father from 1955, the one where he stood proud in front of the barn he built with his own hands. "Look at the pride in his face," she continued. And I'm not saying pride is bad, but when pride becomes stubbornness, when tradition becomes a trap, when staying loyal to the past means sacrificing the future, that is when we need to have hard conversations. The camera followed her around the living room in a slow, deliberate pan. She had practiced this, rehearsed it, probably filmed it multiple times to get it perfect. "Look at this place," she said, gesturing at our furniture. "Everything is from the 80s and 90s. The couch has permanent body impressions from decades of use. The carpet is worn through in the high traffic areas. The walls have not seen fresh paint in over 20 years. And before anyone says this is just humble living or choosing simplicity, let me be clear. This is not a choice. This is acceptance. This is what happens when families tell themselves that wanting more is selfish, that aspiring to better is somehow betraying your roots." She moved into the kitchen, and I felt my jaw clench as she opened our refrigerator. The camera zoomed in on store-brand milk, generic cereal, off-brand orange juice. Generic everything, she said, holding up items like evidence in a trial. Not because they cannot afford name brands. Samuel owns this land outright, 180 acres free and clear. But because somewhere along the line this family decided that spending money on yourself is wasteful. That you should always choose the cheapest option even when you do not have to. That is not frugality, y'all. That is a poverty mindset. That is believing deep in your bones that you do not deserve better. She set the items down and picked up one of my farming magazines from the table. "Samuel reads these agriculture journals religiously," she told her audience. "Studies soil composition and crop rotation and heritage farming techniques. And look, I respect knowledge, I respect education. But when you are using 1960s methods in 2024, when you refuse to modernize or innovate or even consider that there might be better ways to do things, that is not wisdom. That is fear. Fear of change. Fear of admitting that maybe the old ways are not always the best ways." The video cut to her at my desk in the corner of the living room. She sat in my chair, opened one of my ledger books, showed the camera page after page of my handwriting. Rows of numbers, dates, calculations. "This is how Samuel does his accounting," she said. And I could hear the condescension dripping from every word. Handwritten ledgers, pencil and paper. He will not use Excel, will not use QuickBooks, will not even consider that digital record-keeping might be more efficient and accurate. He says computers are not reliable. He says the old ways work fine. This right here, this is what systemic poverty looks like in action. Not the system oppressing you from outside. The system you build in your own mind that keeps you trapped. She stood up, faced the camera directly, her expression shifting to something that looked almost like pity. "My husband Lawrence grew up in this house. Grew up watching his father work 18-hour days for modest returns. Grew up being told that hard work and land ownership are the definitions of Black success. And when I first met this family, I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was noble. I thought this is what generational wealth looks like in Black families." Her voice got quieter, more intimate. "But the more time I spent here, the more I realized something painful. This is not generational wealth. This is generational survival. This is a family that escaped slavery, survived Jim Crow, made it through segregation, and then stopped. Stopped growing, stopped dreaming, stopped believing they deserved more than just survival. They made it to owning land, and that became the ceiling instead of the floor. The camera followed her to the front door out onto the porch. The golden hour light made everything look cinematic, intentional. She sat on the porch steps, looked directly into the lens. Lawrence is an incredible man. Smart, kind, hardworking, everything I could want in a partner. But his father's mindset is toxic and it is contagious. Samuel would rather repair the same 40-year-old tractor for the 100th time than admit it is time to upgrade. Rather patch holes in a roof that should have been replaced a decade ago than invest in something new. Rather handwrite ledgers like his grandfather did than learn a computer system. She paused. Let that sink in. And it is not about the money, y'all. I have seen the bank statements. I know what this land is worth. It is about identity. It is about being so afraid that changing anything means admitting your whole life was a mistake. So afraid that your children doing better than you means you failed. So afraid that letting go of the past means dishonoring your ancestors. Ashley stood up, brushed off her designer jeans, walked toward her BMW parked in the driveway. But here is what I know. Generational poverty is not just about money. It is about vision. It is about believing truly, believing that you deserve better, that your children deserve better, that honoring your ancestors means building on their foundation, not preserving it in amber. She opened her car door, looked back at the house one more time. So yes, we are selling the farm. Yes, we are moving somewhere with actual opportunities for growth. Yes, I am going to keep documenting this journey because someone needs to show young black women and men that you do not have to accept the limitations your parents accepted, that breaking cycles is not betrayal. It is love. It is the highest form of honoring what your ancestors survived by making sure your children do not just survive, they thrive. The video ended with her driving away, the farm getting smaller in the rearview mirror. The final text overlay appeared in bold white letters. Breaking cycles starts with breaking silence. Then the hashtags rolled. Hashtag generational wealth. Hashtag breaking the cycle. Hashtag black poverty. Hashtag authentic influencer. Hashtag systemic change. Hashtag know your worth. I set the phone down on the kitchen counter. The view count was already at 350,000. The comments were flooding in faster than I could read them. But something had shifted. The tide was turning, and Ashley had not noticed yet. Top comment, 15,000 likes, girl. You are wearing a $2,000 sweater while calling them poor. Make it make sense. Second comment, 12,000 likes. If they are so broke, how do you afford that car and that wardrobe on a farmer's income? The math is not mathing. Third comment, 8,000 likes. Anyone else notice? She never shows receipts, never shows bills or bank statements or actual proof. They are struggling, just shows old furniture and calls it poverty. Fourth comment, 6,000 likes. Wait, she said. She has seen bank statements that show the land value, but they are poor. How does that work exactly? I scrolled further. The comment section was turning into a battlefield. This feels really problematic. Using black poverty as content while clearly living comfortably yourself. Why are you making content about your husband's family without their consent? This feels exploitative. I am a social worker who actually works with families in poverty, and this is not what it looks like. This is just old furniture in a paid-off house. Someone do the math on her outfits in recent videos. I count at least $15,000 in clothes and accessories. Where did that money come from if they are so poor? Lawrence was reading over my shoulder. She has no idea, he said quietly. She thinks this is going to make her more popular. She has no idea people are starting to see through it. I smiled, handed him back his phone. Let her think she is winning. Let her feel confident. Let her show up at that gala next week thinking she is about to debut in high society, thinking she has finally escaped the poverty she has been documenting. What happens then? Then she learns what poverty actually looks like. Real poverty. The kind where your family loses their jobs, their housing, their support systems. The kind where your grandmother gets moved to a county facility. The kind where brand deals disappear and followers turn against you and the whole world sees who you really are. Lawrence nodded slowly. She earned this. Yes, I said. Yes, she did. Every single consequence that is about to hit her, she earned with her own choices. I am just going to make sure those consequences arrive all at once in front of witnesses so she cannot pretend it never happened. 6 days until the gala. 6 days until Ashley Crawford Washington learned that you should never use someone's race history and humility as content for your brand. Not if you want to keep everything you built on their backs. The comment section kept filling with doubt and questions. The view count kept climbing, but so did the criticism. Ashley had finally overplayed her hand, and she did not even know it yet. October 10th, 2 days before the charity gala. I woke up at 5 in the morning like I had every day for the past 60 years. Made coffee in the same pot I had used since 1985, sat at the kitchen table as the sun came up over the fields, and thought about what was about to happen. Today was preparation day, the day I organized everything. The day I made sure every piece of evidence was perfect, every document was in order, every detail was accounted for. Because what I was about to do would not just change Ashley's life, it would change her entire family's understanding of the world they thought they knew. By 7, Lawrence came downstairs. He found me spreading documents across the dining room table, organizing them into careful piles. He poured himself coffee and sat down without saying anything, just watching me work. First pile, property deeds. 28 residential properties across 3 counties, each one with its purchase price, current valuation, and rental income listed on a summary sheet I had Janet prepare. The total came to $16.8 million. I put the Magnolia Hills Country Club deed on top, $3.8 million purchase price clearly visible. That one would hit hardest. Second pile, employment records. Richard Crawford hired March 15, 2021 golf course manager, $64,000 annually. Patricia Crawford hired May 3, 2021 events coordinator, $48,000 annually. 3 years and 7 months of paychecks, health insurance contributions, retirement account deposits. I had printouts of every payment, every benefit, every dollar that flowed from my businesses to their bank accounts. The total $336,000. Third pile, foundation documents. This one hurt to organize because it represented genuine charity that was about to end. Barbara Crawford's assisted living support, $3,400 monthly since June 2020. 52 months of payments. Total contribution $163,200. I also included the grant history for Riverside Academy, $125,000 annually since 2018, the school where Emily Crawford taught 3rd grade. Fourth pile, business records. Washington Organic Farms financial statements showing monthly revenue averaging $310,000. Contracts with Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, and 15 other grocery chains. The business valuation from 2023, $42 million. Property tax records showing the farm's assessed value. Everything that proved this was not a failing operation run by a man with a poverty mindset. This was an empire. Fifth pile, and this one I saved for last because it made me angry every time I looked at it. Social media evidence, printed screenshots of every video Ashley had posted about my family, every insult, every hashtag, every comment where she called us poor or backwards, or examples of generational poverty in the Black community. I had them organized chronologically with timestamps, view counts, and engagement metrics. The lawyer in me knew documentation was everything. The father in me wanted to burn every page. Lawrence picked up one of the screenshots. Her October 5th video, the one about the poverty mindset, 3.6 million views. Now, he said quietly, do you know how many people she taught to see Black families like ours as failures? I know, son. That is why this has to be public. If I confronted her privately, she would apologize, delete everything, and learn nothing. She would just be more careful next time, hide her contempt better. But if I expose her in front of 380 people, if I show the entire county what she really did, she will carry that lesson for the rest of her life. He set the screenshot down. And her family will lose everything. Not everything. Their dignity, yes. Their jobs at the club, yes. Some of the financial support, yes. But I am not a cruel man, Lawrence. I am an educational one. The Crawfords will land on their feet eventually. I will make sure of that once they understand what their daughter did. But Ashley needs to feel what real consequences look like. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael, my attorney. All documents ready for presentation. Projector reserved in ballroom. Visual aids prepared per your specifications. Board members briefed and standing by as witnesses. Everything is set. Another text came through immediately after this one from Marcus at the club. Richard and Patricia Crawford both confirmed attendance at the gala. They are excited about the event. Patricia asked if she should prepare remarks for the employee recognition portion of the evening. I told her to be ready for anything. I smiled at that last line. Marcus understood the assignment perfectly. I pulled up the Magnolia Hills Country Club website on my laptop, navigated to the gala page. The sponsor listings were prominently displayed. Bronze level $1,000, about 40 local businesses. Silver level $5,000, a dozen families. Gold level $25,000, 5 major donors. And at the very top, platinum level $100,000 and above. Washington Family Foundation. For the 7th consecutive year. The largest donation, the most prominent placement, the sponsor that made the entire event possible. And Ashley had no idea. She thought she was attending some fancy party where she would finally be around her people, whatever that meant. She thought this was her debut into high society, her escape from the poverty farm she had been documenting. I switched over to Instagram, pulled up Ashley's account. Her most recent story from this morning showed her at some salon in Atlanta getting her hair done. The caption read, "Preparing for tomorrow night. Finally attending a classy event where I belong. Hashtag charity gala, hashtag high society, hashtag elevating my circle, hashtag new chapter." The next story showed shopping bags from Neiman Marcus. When you have to look the part, hashtag investment pieces, hashtag dress for the life you want. Lawrence looked over my shoulder at the screen and shook his head. She has no idea what is about to hit her. None whatsoever, I agreed. She thinks tomorrow night is her moment, her arrival, her proof that she escaped the poverty she has been filming. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Janet, my accountant. Final portfolio summary delivered to your email. Total net worth as of October 2024, $58.4 million. All documentation verified and cross-referenced. Let me know if you need anything else. I opened the email, downloaded the PDF. Janet had created a beautiful summary document with charts and graphs and numbers that told the complete story of what I had built over 5 decades. Every property, every business, every investment, every charitable contribution. The kind of document that made it impossible to argue or deny or dismiss. "This goes on the projector," Lawrence asked, right after the social media screenshots. "I want everyone to see what she said about us first. Let them feel the cruelty of it, the racial assumptions, the contempt. Then I show them the truth, the numbers, the empire she was trying to steal, the family she was mocking while living on their charity. How long is your speech?" 15 minutes. That is all I need. 15 minutes to dismantle 3 years of lies. And then what? Then I make the announcements. Employment terminations effective immediately. Foundation funding redirected to more deserving recipients. Lease violations resulting in eviction. Everything happens at once in front of witnesses, so she cannot claim it was personal or vindictive. Just consequences for documented behavior. Lawrence stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the farm that 4 generations of Washington men had worked. "You know, Mom would be proud of you, right? She always said you were too nice, too patient with people who did not deserve it. She would love this." "Your mother understood strategic patience," I said. "She watched me build all this in silence, never complained about the old furniture or the used clothes or the choice to live simply while the bank accounts grew. She knew what we were doing and why." "I miss her," Lawrence said quietly. "Me too, son. Every single day. But she taught us both the most important lesson. Wealth is not what you show. It is what you do when nobody is watching. And consequences are not revenge when they are earned." We spent the rest of the day organizing, double-checking every document, making sure every number was accurate, every timestamp was correct, every piece of evidence was irrefutable. This was not about emotion or anger. This was about facts, about showing the world exactly what had happened and letting them draw their own conclusions. By evening, everything was ready. 5 piles of documents, each one telling part of the story. The projector file loaded and tested. The speech written and rehearsed, the announcements prepared and legally reviewed. Nothing left to chance, nothing left to luck. Tomorrow night, October 12th, at the Magnolia Hills Country Club annual charity gala, Ashley Crawford Washington would learn the most expensive lesson of her life. And 380 of Greene County's most influential people would witness every moment of it. Strategic patience. It was finally time to see if my father's lesson held true. Let your enemies defeat themselves, then step aside and watch them fall. I was about to step aside. Gravity would do the rest. October 12th. The day had finally arrived. I woke up at my usual time, 5 in the morning, but I did not go out to the fields. Today was different. Today required a different kind of preparation. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and thought about my father. About how he used to say that the best victories are the ones where you do not have to throw a single punch. You just have to show up and let the truth do the work. Today, the truth would do all the heavy lifting. I just had to deliver it. The Magnolia Hills Country Club Annual Charity Gala. The biggest social event in Greene County happened every October for the past 34 years. 380 guests expected $900 per plate, black tie required. The funds raised went to local food banks, after-school programs, and scholarships for underprivileged students. It was a good cause, which is why I had been the platinum sponsor for 7 consecutive years. $100,000 every single time, no hesitation. Ashley had been preparing for this night like it was her coronation. I knew because Lawrence told me, and because I could see it all over her social media. She had documented every step of getting ready, turning it into content for her followers who were supposedly invested in watching her escape generational poverty. Yesterday, she posted from some high-end salon in Buckhead, the kind of place where a haircut costs what most people spend on groceries for a month. Her stylist, a woman named Dominique, who had her own reality show, apparently spent 3 hours on Ashley's hair. Balayage touch-up, deep conditioning treatment, blowout, and styling. The bill, which Ashley showed in her Instagram story with a casual, "Oh well, you have to invest in yourself," caption, came to $425. This morning, she posted from her apartment at 6 a.m. showing her makeup artist arriving with cases full of products. Professional glam for tonight's charity gala. The caption read, "When you want to make the right impression on the right people. Hashtag self-care. Hashtag worth it." The makeup artist worked for 2 hours, transforming Ashley's face into something camera-ready and flawless. Cost $320, not including the tip Ashley mentioned she added because good service deserves recognition. At 2 in the afternoon, she posted a photo of a garment bag from Valentino. The dress had been shipped directly from the store in Atlanta after she tried it on last week. Valentino Fall Collection, she wrote. Sometimes you find a piece that just speaks to you. Tonight is about showing up as your best self. The dress cost $3,600. I knew because she posted the receipt blurred out just enough to seem modest, but clear enough that everyone could see the price. The shoes came next. Manolo Blahnik pumps in black patent leather, 4-inch heels, classic and elegant, according to her post. $950. The clutch, some designer I had never heard of, another $600. Jewelry borrowed from a boutique in Virginia Highland, insured value of $12,000 for the evening. Her final post before getting ready showed her in a white robe, face mask, on glass of champagne in hand. "Tonight I finally get to be around my people," she wrote. "No more pretending to fit in where I do not belong. No more rural poverty museums. No more poverty mindset dinners. Just elegance, class, and a room full of people who understand that success is something to celebrate, not hide. Hashtag charity gala. Hashtag high society. Hashtag new chapter. Hashtag this is me." The comments were mixed now, I noticed. Some followers cheering her on, telling her she deserved this moment, but others asking uncomfortable questions. How are you affording all this if your family is so poor? Where does a farmer's daughter-in-law get Valentino money? This does not add up. Ashley was not responding to those comments, just hearting the supportive ones and ignoring the doubt. Meanwhile, at the farm, I was getting ready too. But my preparation looked different. I drove into town around noon, went to the same place I rented my tuxedo from every year, Jefferson Formal Wear, owned by a man named Carl, who had been renting suits to Greene County men since 1987. The tuxedo cost $95 for the evening, basic black. Nothing fancy, perfectly adequate. Carl knew me new. I came in every October for the gala, never tried to upsell me on premium options or designer labels. "Looking good this year, Samuel," he said as I tried on the jacket. "Same as last year. Same as every year," I told him. "If it works, why change it?" The shoes I wore were the same patent leather dress shoes I had owned for 15 years. I had them resoled twice, polished them regularly, took care of them the way my father taught me to take care of everything. They were not fashionable, but they were functional, and that was all that mattered. I showered at home, dressed slowly, checked myself in the mirror. 75 years old, looking at a reflection that showed every one of those years. Gray hairlines around my eyes, hands that showed decades of farm work. I looked like exactly what I was, an old black farmer who lived simply and worked hard. Perfect. At 6 p.m., I climbed into my 1988 Ford F-150, the same truck Ashley had mocked in dozens of videos, the same truck she used as evidence of my poverty mindset. I started the engine, listened to it turn over smooth and reliable like it always did, and drove toward Magnolia Hills Country Club. I wanted to make an entrance she would never forget, not by showing up in some luxury vehicle or wearing some expensive designer suit, but by showing up as exactly who I was. Simple, humble, unassuming, the kind of man people underestimate right up until the moment they realize they made a terrible mistake. The evening sun sat low on the horizon as I drove, painting the Georgia sky in shades of orange and pink. Beautiful night for a lesson. Beautiful night for consequences. Beautiful night to show the difference between fake wealth and real wealth, between performance and substance, between what things look like and what they actually are. Ashley was probably arriving right now in her BMW, wearing her Valentino dress, carrying her designer clutch, thinking this was her moment, her debut, her proof that she had escaped. She had no idea she was walking into the most educational evening of her life. No idea that the old farmer in the old truck was about to teach her and everyone watching what real power looked like when it finally decided to show itself. Strategic patience, 5 decades of building in silence, 7 years of platinum sponsorship, 3 years of watching her mock what she did not understand, all of it leading to this moment. I pulled into the country club parking lot, found a spot in the back away from the valet area where the luxury cars were lining up, turned off the engine, sat for a moment in the quiet. Then I picked up the briefcase from the passenger seat, the one with all the documents, all the evidence, all the truth. Time to go to work. The Magnolia Hills Country Club ballroom looked like something out of a magazine. Crystal chandeliers hung from 20-foot ceilings, catching the light and scattering it across white tablecloths that covered 40 round tables. Centerpieces of autumn flowers, deep oranges and burgundies and golds sat on every table. A string quartet played Mozart in the corner near the bar. Waitstaff in crisp uniforms circulated with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. The whole scene screamed old money, established wealth, the kind of event where people came to see and be seen. I arrived at 7, parked my truck in the back lot, and entered through the side door that the staff used. Marcus met me there, looking sharp in his tuxedo, clipboard in hand. "Everything is ready, Mr. Washington. Projector tested and working. Documents loaded. Your remarks are scheduled for 8:15, right after the welcome and donation announcements." "Perfect. Are the Crawfords here?" Richard is managing the grounds crew for valet parking. Patricia is overseeing the catering staff. They have no idea what is coming. Good. Let's keep it that way. I made my way to the bar, ordered a ginger ale, and found a table near the back where I could watch people arrive. I wanted to see Ashley make her entrance, wanted to see how she carried herself when she thought she had finally escaped the poverty farm she had been mocking for years. She arrived at 7:15, right on schedule. I heard her before I saw her, the click of expensive heels on marble, the sound of her voice pitched just loud enough to be noticed. Her BMW pulled up to the valet station where Richard Crawford, her own father, took her keys without recognizing the significance of the moment. She stepped out, and I had to admit she looked the part. The Valentino dress fit perfectly, deep emerald green that caught the light. Her hair was styled in loose waves, makeup, flawless jewelry, sparkling. She looked like money, performed wealth at its finest. Lawrence was with her, uncomfortable in his rented tuxedo, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. He caught my eye from across the room, gave me a small nod. I nodded back. He knew what was coming. He had chosen his side. Ashley immediately started working the room. I watched her move from group to group, introducing herself with that practiced smile, the one she used in her videos when she wanted to seem relatable but aspirational. She air-kissed women she had never met, laughed at jokes she probably did not understand, performed the role of someone who belonged here. She made her way to a group near the silent auction tables where Margaret Collins was examining a donated vacation package to Hilton Head. Margaret was married to Robert Collins, president of First National Bank of Greene County. Old money, real money, the kind of family that had been wealthy for so long they did not need to show it anymore. Margaret was in her 60s, elegant in a simple black dress that probably cost more than Ashley's Valentino, but did not announce it. I moved closer, staying just within earshot, but not obviously listening. "Hello, I am Ashley Washington," Ashley said, extending her hand. "My husband and I are new to the social circle here. Well, newer. Still getting to know everyone." Margaret shook her hand politely. "Washington, I know that name. Your family has been very generous to our charitable causes over the years." Ashley looked confused for just a second, then recovered with a smile. "Oh, I think you might be thinking of a different Washington family. We are newer to the area. Just farmers, really. Simple people trying to give back where we can. Margaret tilted her head slightly, studying Ashley. No, I am quite certain. The Washington Family Foundation, platinum sponsor for years now. $100,000 annually. Your family has been instrumental in keeping this event successful. Ashley's smile became more strained. That is so sweet, but I think there has been a mix-up. My father-in-law, he is just a small farmer. Very modest means. We are actually in the process of helping him transition to a more manageable lifestyle. Margaret looked even more confused now. But the foundation, it is one of our largest benefactors. Robert always speaks so highly of Samuel Washington's business acumen and generosity. I watched Ashley's face as the name registered. Samuel Washington. Her expression flickered just for a moment, confusion mixing with something that looked like the first whisper of doubt, but she pushed it away, laughed it off. What a funny coincidence, she said brightly. Same last name. Small world. Well, it was lovely meeting you. I should go find my husband. She moved away quickly, leaving Margaret looking puzzled. I smiled into my ginger ale. The first crack in the facade. By 8 o'clock, all 380 guests had arrived and found their assigned seats. The room buzzed with conversation, laughter, the clink of glasses and silverware. I stayed at my table in the back watching. Ashley and Lawrence were seated near the front table 6, a good placement that indicated someone thought they were important. Ashley kept checking her phone, probably getting ready to post about the event to her followers. The lights dimmed slightly. The string quartet finished their piece. Robert Collins, the bank president and gala chairman, stepped up to the podium at the front of the room. He was in his 70s, silver-haired, commanding presence. The room quieted immediately. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 34th Annual Magnolia Hills Country Club Charity Gala. He waited for the polite applause to die down. Tonight, we gather not just to enjoy an evening of fellowship and fine dining, but to support the vital work being done in our community. Food banks that feed hungry families, after-school programs that give children safe places to learn and grow, scholarships that help deserving young people attend college. More applause. Ashley was clapping enthusiastically, probably already composing her Instagram caption about being part of something bigger than herself. This year, I am thrilled to announce that we have raised over $520,000 for these causes. Robert paused for effect, let the room react. That is our highest total ever, and it is because of the generosity of people in this room. People who understand that with privilege comes responsibility. He pulled out a piece of paper, adjusted his reading glasses. I want to recognize our sponsors, starting with our bronze-level supporters. He read through a list of local businesses, each getting a round of applause. Then silver-level larger donations from established families. Then gold-level $25,000 commitments from 5 major donors. And finally, he said, his voice taking on a tone of deep respect, our platinum-level sponsor. For the 7th consecutive year, the largest single donation of the evening. $100,000 from the Washington Family Foundation. The room erupted in applause. I stayed seated watching Ashley's table. Her champagne glass slipped from her fingers. The sound of crystal shattering on marble cut through the applause like a gunshot. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. Ashley sat frozen, staring at the broken glass spreading across the white tablecloth, champagne dripping onto her Valentino dress. Lawrence reached over, grabbed her hand, held it tight. Robert continued, oblivious to the drama at table 6. As has been our tradition, Mr. Samuel Washington, founder of the Washington Family Foundation, will now address the gathering and share a few words about this year's initiatives. I stood up from my table in the back. The room was completely silent now, except for my footsteps on the marble floor. Every eye in the ballroom turned to watch as I walked slowly toward the podium carrying my briefcase. I passed table 6. Ashley's face had gone white. She stared at me like she was seeing a ghost, like reality was rearranging itself in her mind, and she could not quite make sense of the new picture forming. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Lawrence squeezed her hand harder. I saw him whisper something to her, but I could not hear what it was. I reached the podium, set down my briefcase, looked out at 380 faces, all watching me with various expressions of curiosity, respect, and in a few cases confusion about why the platinum sponsor was a black farmer. They had never seen at these events despite 7 years of donations. Richard and Patricia Crawford stood against the back wall with the other management staff finally starting to understand that something significant was happening but not yet grasping what it meant. Robert shook my hand, whispered, "The floor is yours, Samuel," and stepped aside. I gripped the sides of the podium, took a breath, looked directly at Ashley, whose mascara was starting to run as tears formed in her eyes. And then I began. "Good evening, everyone. My name is Samuel Washington. I own a small farm outside of town, 180 acres of land that has been in my family since 1952. Very simple operation, nothing fancy." I paused, let that sink in. Some of you may have seen social media content recently about rural poverty, generational limitations, and the struggles of farming families in the Black community. My daughter-in-law has been quite vocal about these issues. Very educational content, apparently. Millions of views. The room was absolutely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. I opened my briefcase. Tonight I would like to address some misconceptions about agriculture in our community, about wealth, about what success actually looks like when you build it the right way. I pulled out the first document. Let me start by showing you exactly what that simple farm is worth. I held up the first document, a property deed with the official seal visible even from the back of the room. This is the deed for Magnolia Hills Country Club, the very building we are standing in right now. Purchase price $3.8 million. Purchased in October 2020 by Washington Holdings LLC during the pandemic when the previous owners defaulted on their loans. Gasps rippled through the crowd. People looked around at the chandeliers, the marble floors, the elegant space they thought belonged to someone else. Robert Collins, still standing near the podium, went very still. Margaret Collins put her hand over her mouth. I paused, let that revelation settle. Some of you may be wondering why this matters. Let me explain. I connected my laptop to the projector system. The screen behind me lit up with an organizational chart showing Washington Holdings LLC and its subsidiaries, including MH Management Group, the company that handled all the club's hiring and payroll. Richard and Patricia Crawford work here. I gestured toward the back of the room where they stood frozen against the wall. Richard is our golf course manager. Patricia coordinates our events, including this lovely evening. Both have been excellent employees for 3 years and 7 months. Professional, reliable, respected by staff and members alike. Polite applause started, confused but automatic. I held up my hand to stop it. Their combined annual salary is $112,000. Health insurance, retirement contributions, housing allowance, all included. Over the past 3 years, they have earned $336,000 in total compensation. I clicked to the next slide. Employment contracts appeared on screen, Richard's and Patricia's signatures clearly visible at the bottom. What Richard and Patricia did not know, what they could not have known, is that every single dollar of their salary for the past 3 years came from companies I own. All hiring was done through management companies with generic names. All paychecks bore corporate logos that did not say Samuel Washington. The system was designed for discretion to protect my privacy and allow me to help people without making it about recognition or gratitude. Richard gripped the wall behind him. Patricia had tears streaming down her face. I could see them putting pieces together, understanding flooding in like cold water. So when my daughter-in-law made videos about her poor father-in-law, about the ghetto farmer with no business sense, about the old black man hoarding land, while young families struggled, she was talking about the person who had been employing her parents for over 3 years, keeping them financially stable, giving them health insurance that covered Patricia's thyroid medication and Richard's blood pressure prescriptions, building their retirement accounts back up after they lost everything in California. The room was absolutely silent now. Not a glass clinking, not a whisper, nothing. 380 people holding their collective breath. Ashley sat at table 6 with her head down, shoulders shaking. Lawrence had his arm around her, but his face was stone. He was done protecting her from consequences. Let me show you what else she did not know. I clicked to the next slide. A map of Greene County appeared with 28 red dots marking property locations. These are rental properties I own. Started buying them in 1975, one foreclosed house at a time. Fixed them up myself, rented them to families who had been denied mortgages by banks that did not see them as worthy investments. Today, I own 28 residential properties across 3 counties. The next slide showed a financial summary. Total value $16.8 million. Average monthly rental income $68,000. Every single property provides affordable housing to working families, most of them black families, most of them people who were told no by institutions that should have helped them. More gasps. People were starting to do the math, understanding that the old man in the old truck was not what he appeared to be. But let me tell you about the farm itself, since that is what my daughter-in-law tried to sell while I was recovering from heart surgery. I clicked again. The screen showed Washington Organic Farms LLC logo and a photo of the main barn, the one Ashley called an eyesore. This is not just a farm that grows corn and soybeans, though we still plant some for tradition. This is Washington Organic Farms, a certified organic operation that has been supplying specialty produce to grocery chains across the Southeast since 1995. We have contracts with Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, and 15 other major retailers, 432 stores across 8 states. The next slide showed the contract's official letterhead from each company, my signature on every one. Our monthly revenue averages $310,000. That is what those poor dirt fields generate every single month. Our most recent business valuation, conducted by an independent agricultural assessment firm in Atlanta, put Washington Organic Farms at $42 million. I heard someone in the audience whisper, "Oh my God." Another person said $42 million. The numbers were so far beyond what anyone expected that they were struggling to process it. So when my daughter-in-law called a realtor to sell my farm for $880,000, thinking she was liberating us from poverty, she was actually trying to sell a $42 million operation that feeds thousands of families every week. She was trying to steal an empire she did not even know existed. I clicked to the next slide. This one showed Ashley's TikTok profile, her follower count, her most popular videos with their view counts displayed. For 3 years, Ashley Crawford Washington has been documenting what she called generational poverty in the black community. Let me show you some of her educational content. The first video appeared on screen. Ashley in our living room pointing at furniture my father built. Generational poverty is real. Her voice filled the ballroom through the sound system. This is what happens when black families accept limitation instead of pushing for more. I let it play for 15 seconds, then paused it. 2.1 million views. Next video. Ashley opening our refrigerator, holding up store brand products. They have convinced themselves that spending money is wasteful, that wanting nice things is selfish. That is the poverty mindset. Paused it. 1.8 million views. Next video. This one showed her at my desk opening my ledger books. Handwritten accounting. He will not use Excel. This is what systemic poverty looks like. Not the system oppressing you. The system you build in your own mind. Paused it. 3.6 million views. I clicked through 5 more videos, each one more cutting than the last. Each one using my race, my family's history, my choice to live simply as content to build her brand. The room watched in growing horror as the clips played Ashley's voice echoing through the ballroom where she now sat sobbing into her hands. Combined views across all her poverty content, 14.3 million. 14 million people taught that successful black farmers who choose humility over flash are examples of failure. 14 million people told that owning land and building wealth quietly is a poverty mindset that needs to be escaped. I turned off the projector. The screen went dark. Turned back to face the audience. Let me be very clear about what happened here. My daughter-in-law saw an old black man driving an old truck wearing work clothes living in a house with furniture from the 1980s. And she made an assumption. She assumed poverty. She assumed failure. She assumed that a black farmer living simply must be living poorly. That visible wealth is the only real wealth. That my father's generation that survived Jim Crow and segregation and built something from nothing were examples of what is wrong with black families instead of what is right with them. My voice was steady, but the anger was starting to show through. I let it. She used my race and my humility as content. She turned my family's history into a cautionary tale. She taught millions of people that black success has to look a certain way or it does not count. And she did all of this while living entirely on money that came from my businesses. I picked up another document from my briefcase. But the story gets worse, much worse, because it was not just her parents who were depending on my charity while she mocked my poverty. I clicked the projector back on. This time a letter appeared. Official letterhead from Sunset Manor Assisted Living. Barbara Crawford is Ashley's grandmother, 87 years old, wonderful woman by all accounts. She requires full-time assisted living care, the kind that costs real money. Sunset Manor charges $3,400 per month for a private room with a garden view, the dignity and care that every elder deserves. The next slide showed a check register. Monthly payments, $3,400 each, dating back to June 2020. The Washington Family Foundation has been paying Barbara's care costs for 4 years and 4 months. 52 months of payments. Total charitable contribution, $163,200. Patricia Crawford, still standing against the back wall, let out a sound like she had been punched in the stomach. Richard put his arm around her, but he was crying too. Barbara did not know. The family did not know. They thought it was some random charitable foundation that saw their need and decided to help. They had no idea it was me. No idea that the ghetto farmer their daughter was mocking on TikTok was the reason their mother and grandmother could live in dignity instead of a county facility. I clicked to the next slide. A photo of Riverside Academy appeared, a small private school on the east side of the county. Ashley's younger sister, Emily Crawford, teaches 3rd grade at Riverside Academy. It is a wonderful school, serves mostly black and brown students from working-class families, keeps tuition low so education stays accessible. $41,000 annual salary for teachers, which is generous for a small private school. The next slide showed grant documentation. The Washington Family Foundation contributes $125,000 annually to Riverside Academy. We have done so every year since 2018. That money funds teacher salaries, classroom supplies, technology, field trips. About 30% of Emily's paycheck, roughly $12,000 per year, comes from grant money I provide. I looked directly at Ashley, who was now openly sobbing, makeup completely destroyed. So your sister teaches black children using resources I fund in a building I help keep open, while you make content about how black families like mine choose poverty and pass down a poverty mindset to our children. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The entire room felt it. And there is one more thing. I pulled out the final document from my briefcase. This is ownership documentation for Park Vista Heights, a luxury apartment building in downtown Athens. 24 units purchased in October 2022 for $4.2 million by Washington Properties LLC when the previous owner defaulted. Ashley's head snapped up. She knew what was coming. Unit 14C. 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. 8th floor, rooftop pool access. Monthly rent, $2,800. Current tenants, Lawrence and Ashley Washington. The audience actually gasped again. This was too much, too perfectly ironic, too devastatingly complete. My daughter-in-law lives in my building, parks her BMW in my garage, uses my rooftop pool to film content for her followers, pays rent to management companies that funnel the money to my accounts. She has been my tenant for 2 years, paying me $67,200 in rent while making videos about my poverty and her need to escape it. I closed the briefcase, looked out at 380 stunned faces. Let me add this up so everyone understands the complete picture. Richard's salary over 3 years, $192,000. Patricia's salary over 3 years, $144,000. Barbara's assisted living over 4 years, $163,200. Emily's salary portion from my grants over 4 years, approximately $37,000. Rent from Ashley and Lawrence over 2 years, $67,200. I paused for effect. Total financial support to the Crawford family over the past 4 years, $3,400. The number hung in the air like smoke. $600,000. More than $500,000 from the ghetto farmer, from the man with the poverty mindset, from the old black man who represents everything wrong with his generation. The room was absolutely silent except for Ashley's crying and the sound of Richard and Patricia Crawford being comforted by other staff members against the back wall. I had more to say, much more, but this was enough for now. Let them process what they had just learned. Let the weight of it settle. Let Ashley truly understand what she had done. Then I would tell them what happens next. I took a breath, gripped the podium, and continued. Because we are not done yet. There is more you need to understand about what happened here. I clicked the projector back on. This time, more video clips appeared. Not Ashley's content, my content. Footage I had filmed myself over the past 3 weeks documenting everything she said when she thought no one important was listening. This is a recording from September 18th, 3 days after my heart surgery. I was in the hospital recovering. Ashley thought I was unconscious. She made a phone call to a real estate agent in the hallway outside my room. I pressed play. Ashley's voice filled the ballroom through the sound system, clear and cold and calculated. "Hi, this is Ashley Crawford, Washington, calling about the property listing we discussed. My father-in-law is incapacitated right now, heart surgery complications. We need to move quickly while he cannot interfere with the sale." The audience shifted uncomfortably. This was different from the TikTok videos. This was private conversation, real intention, the mask completely off. The recording continued. Samuel Washington, he is 75, no business sense whatsoever. Been farming the same plot since the 1970s like it is still the civil rights era. The man still handwrites his accounting and actual ledger books. Can you believe that? Someone in the audience said, "Oh no." Another person whispered, "She did not. I let it play. Listen, between you and me, I am doing society a favor getting this property developed. Greene County needs progress, not some stubborn old man's vanity project. Samuel is basically holding back the entire area." Ashley had stopped crying. She sat frozen at table 6, face white, staring at the screen like it was showing her own execution. The recording went on. At his age, with his health problems, he might not be making decisions much longer anyway. Lawrence has legal power of attorney. I just need to convince him that selling is the compassionate choice. I stopped the recording, let the words hang in the air. Compassionate choice. She was trying to sell my life's work, my father's legacy, 4 generations of Washington family history, and she called it compassion. This is what my daughter-in-law said about me while I was recovering from surgery that nearly killed me, while machines were keeping me alive, while my son paced the hospital worried about whether his father would survive. She was in the hallway planning to steal everything I built. I clicked to the next slide. More recordings, these ones shorter. Ashley talking to her parents over dinner about how backward and stubborn I was. Ashley on a video call with her sister laughing about the poverty museum she had to visit for Sunday dinners. Ashley telling Lawrence that his father's generation just did not understand modern success. But here is what I want you to focus on. I paused the recordings, brought up screenshots of her public videos again. Watch how she talks about race when she thinks millions of strangers are watching. The first screenshot showed one of her most popular videos. Text overlay, "Generational poverty in the black community is real." Below it, her caption, "Why some black families stay stuck in cycles of limitation." Next screenshot, "Old black farmers hoarding land while young families struggle." Next one, "The poverty mindset that gets passed down in black families." Next one, "Breaking the cycle starts with acknowledging that our elders did not always know best." I let the slides cycle through, each one more explicit about race than the last. My daughter-in-law made her brand about black poverty, about black failure, about black families who supposedly choose limitation and pass it down like a genetic disease. She used my blackness, my family's history, surviving slavery, and Jim Crow and segregation as content to sell skincare products and designer clothes to her followers. My voice was steady but hard now. The room could feel the anger underneath righteous and earned. She taught 14 million people that successful black farmers are failures if they do not display their wealth the way she thinks they should. That owning land quietly is the same as being poor. That building an empire without announcing it means you have a poverty mindset. That my generation that survived things her generation cannot even imagine are examples of what is wrong with black families, instead of what is miraculous about our survival and success. Margaret Collins was nodding, tears in her eyes. Several other black guests in the audience were doing the same. They understood what I was saying in a way the white guests were only beginning to grasp. This is not just about money. This is not just about disrespect or ingratitude. This is about a white woman using racial stereotypes to build a social media brand on the backs of black people she claimed to care about. Using our history, our struggle, our choice to build wealth differently than white families could as entertainment and profit. I clicked to the financial documents again. Let me show you what that poverty mindset actually built. The screen filled with property deeds, business valuations, bank statements. I walked through each one methodically, making sure every person in the room understood the full scope. 28 rental properties purchased between 1975 and 2023. Total current value, $16.8 million. I bought these properties in black neighborhoods and working-class areas, places where families had been redlined and denied mortgages. Fixed them up myself. Rented them at fair prices to people who needed stable housing. Built wealth while building community. That is what my poverty mindset created. Next slide. Washington Organic Farms. Started in 1982 when people said organic farming was a hippie trend. Certified organic in 1985, one of the first black-owned organic operations in Georgia. Today, we supply produce to 17 major grocery chains, 432 stores. Monthly revenue, $310,000. Annual revenue, $3.7 million. Business valuation, $42 million. I let those numbers sit. $42 million. That worthless dirt farm my daughter-in-law tried to sell for $880,000, actually worth $42 million. That poor old black farmer with no business sense, actually running a multi-state agricultural operation that feeds thousands of families organic food every single week. The math was starting to land. People were pulling out their phones, probably doing calculations, probably pulling up Ashley's social media to see it with new eyes. Add in Magnolia Hills Country Club, $3.8 million. The apartment building, $4.2 million. Various other commercial properties and investments, $4.7 million. I clicked to the final summary slide. Total net worth as of October 2024, $58.4 million. The number appeared on screen in huge font, $58.4 million. The room erupted, not in applause, but in shocked murmurs, whispers, exclamations. 58 million. The ghetto farmer is worth 58 million. Oh my God, this cannot be real. But it was real. Every dollar accounted for, every asset documented, every number verified by independent assessors and auditors. I let the chaos build for a moment, then raised my hand for silence. The room quieted immediately. So let me be very clear about what happened here. A white woman married into a black family, saw an old black man living simply, made assumptions based on his appearance, his truck, his clothes, his choice not to display wealth, decided he represented poverty and failure, built a social media brand teaching millions of people that black families like mine are cautionary tales, all while living entirely, completely, 100% on money generated by that same black man's businesses and charity. I looked directly at Ashley. She could not meet my eyes. $600,000. That is how much her family received from me over 4 years, while she called me ghetto trash, while she said I had a poverty mindset, while she filmed my refrigerator and my furniture and my ledger books as evidence of generational failure in the black community. The room was silent again, but it was a different kind of silence now. Heavy. Judgmental. 380 people processing the complete picture of what they had just witnessed. And now she knows. Now her family knows. Now all of you know. The poor farmer was never poor. The poverty museum was never poverty. The ghetto trash was never trash. It was wealth built the right way, quietly, carefully, without flash or announcement. The way black families have had to build wealth for generations just to stay safe. I closed my laptop, unplugged it from the projector. The screen went dark. But here is the thing about building wealth the right way. It comes with the power to choose who benefits from it, to decide who deserves help and who needs to learn what real poverty actually looks like. I picked up another folder from my briefcase. Official documents, legal papers, letters already signed and notarized. And that brings me to the announcements I need to make tonight. Ashley's head snapped up. She knew what was coming. Lawrence squeezed her hand but did not look at her. He stared straight ahead, jaw set, accepting what had to happen next. Richard and Patricia, still standing against the back wall, gripped each other tighter. They knew too. The moment they had been dreading since I started speaking was about to arrive. Effective immediately, I said, my voice clear and firm, the Washington Family Foundation is reassessing all charitable commitments. Recipients who demonstrate ingratitude, disrespect, or racial prejudice toward benefactors will have their funding redirected to more deserving causes. I pulled out the first letter. Employment termination for Richard Crawford, golf course manager at Magnolia Hills Country Club. Effective Monday, October 15th, 2024. Severance package of 3 months' salary. Final paycheck to be issued within 2 weeks per Georgia labor law. Richard closed his eyes. Patricia let out a small sob. Employment termination for Patricia Crawford, events coordinator at Magnolia Hills Country Club. Same terms. Effective Monday. 3-month severance. I pulled out the next letter. Funding termination for Barbara Crawford assisted living expenses at Sunset Manor. Washington Family Foundation contributions will cease effective October 31st, 2024. Family will need to make alternative arrangements for ongoing care. Patricia was crying openly now, other staff members trying to comfort her. Richard looked like he aged 10 years in 10 seconds. Lease violation notice for Unit 14C at Park Vista Heights. Tenants Lawrence and Ashley Washington are in violation of community standards clauses regarding conduct that damages property reputation or brings negative attention to the building. Lease is terminated effective immediately. 72 hours to vacate premises. Ashley made a sound like a wounded animal. Lawrence did not react. He had known this was coming. We had discussed it. And finally, I pulled out the last letter, the educational grant reevaluation for Riverside Academy. Due to conduct by family members of school employees that conflicts with our foundation's values of respect and dignity, we are placing the $125,000 annual grant under review. Final decision to be made by November 1st. I set the papers down on the podium, looked out at the audience. These are consequences, not revenge, not cruelty. Consequences for documented behavior, for using someone's race and generosity as content, for teaching millions of people that black success should be mocked if it does not look the way you think it should look. I gathered my documents back into the briefcase. Wealth is not what you show. It is what you do when nobody is watching. My father taught me that. His father taught him that. We learned it because we had to, because displaying wealth as black men in the South was dangerous. But it became something better than survival. It became wisdom. Build quietly. Help silently. Let your work speak for itself. I clicked the briefcase shut. Ashley wanted to show people what escaping poverty looked like. Now she gets to learn what real poverty feels like. Without her parents' income, without her grandmother's care being covered, without her luxury apartment, without brand deals or followers who will stay loyal once they understand what she did. I stepped back from the podium. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what happens when you confuse humility with weakness, when you mistake simplicity for poverty, when you use someone's race as entertainment for millions. The room stayed silent for 3 full seconds. Then Robert Collins started clapping. Slowly at first, then faster. Margaret joined him. Then another person, then another. Within seconds, the entire ballroom was applauding. 380 people standing, clapping, some crying, all understanding that they had just witnessed something rare and necessary. Justice. The applause continued for almost 4 minutes. I stood at the podium, not smiling, not acknowledging it, just waiting for it to end. This was not a moment for celebration. This was a moment for education, and I was not finished yet. When the room finally quieted, I held up my hand and spoke again. Before I step down, there is one more thing I need to address. Something specific that makes this situation more than just family drama or financial betrayal. Something that should concern every person in this room, black and white alike. The mood shifted. People sat back down, leaned forward, sensing that another layer was about to be revealed. My daughter-in-law did not just make content about poverty. She made content specifically about poverty in the black community, about black families, about black farmers, about what she diagnosed as problems unique to black people. Let me show you exactly what I mean. I turned the projector back on. This time I had compiled a supercut of Ashley's videos edited to highlight every single time she mentioned race. I pressed play. Ashley's voice filled the ballroom. Generational poverty in the black community is real. Cut to another video, old black farmers hoarding land. Cut again. The poverty mindset that gets passed down in black families. Another cut. Why some black families stay stuck. Another. My black father-in-law still lives like it is the 1960s. Another. This is what I am teaching my followers about cycles in the black community. I let it play for 90 seconds. Every mention of race, every diagnosis of black failure, every explanation of why black families supposedly stayed poor. By the time it ended, the racial focus of her content was undeniable. 4.2 million views across these videos, specifically about blackness and poverty. 4 million people taught that successful black farmers like me are failures. That black families who build wealth quietly have a poverty mindset. That black men who survived Jim Crow and segregation and built empires from nothing are examples of what is wrong instead of what is miraculous. I paused. Let that number sink in. 4 million people. Now let me be very clear about something. I chose to live simply. I chose the old truck and the work clothes and the handwritten ledgers. Those were choices made by a wealthy man who understood that flashy wealth makes you a target, especially if you are black. My father taught me that. His father taught him that. We learned it watching black families who showed off get destroyed by jealousy, by violence, by systems designed to take from us. My voice was steady, but the emotion was building underneath. So we built quietly. We accumulated in silence. We helped our communities without announcements. We became millionaires without looking like millionaires because that was how we stayed safe. That was how we survived. I clicked to the next slide, a timeline of black history. Slavery to Jim Crow to segregation to redlining to mass incarceration. And my daughter-in-law, a white woman from a family that lost their wealth and had to start over, decided that my survival strategy was a poverty mindset, that my protection was failure, that my choice to build without displaying was something black people needed to escape from. The black guests in the audience were nodding, some wiping tears. They understood this in their bones. The white guests looked uncomfortable, starting to grasp the deeper layer of what had happened here. She did not just mock a rich man pretending to be poor. She mocked a black man using the strategies his ancestors needed to survive. She turned our history, our trauma, our wisdom born from necessity into content, into entertainment, into a brand she could sell to millions of people who do not understand why black wealth looks different. I clicked through more slides showing comments on her videos. Look at what her followers learned. These are real comments, thousands of them. The screen filled with comment screenshots. This is why black families stay poor, they accept less. Black people need to stop glorifying struggle and start glorifying success. Finally, someone talking about the poverty mindset in black culture. Your father-in-law represents everything holding the black community back. I let the audience read them. Let them see what Ashley had taught millions of people to believe about black families like mine. This is the damage. Not just to my reputation or my feelings, but to how millions of people now view black success. If it does not look like white success, if it does not display the same way, if it does not announce itself with luxury cars and designer clothes, then it must not be real success. It must be poverty. It must be failure. It must be a mindset that needs correcting. My hands gripped the podium tighter. And the cruelest irony. While she was teaching this to millions, while she was diagnosing black poverty and black failure and black limitation, she was living entirely on black wealth, on my wealth, on money generated by the very man she used as her example of what is wrong with black families. I clicked to the final summary slide. The Crawford family's total support over 4 years, $603,400. Her parents' combined income, $336,000 from my country club. Her grandmother's care, $163,000 from my foundation. Her sister's salary portion, $37,000 from my grants. Her own rent, $67,000 to my properties. Every single dollar came from a black man's empire. Every single dollar came from the ghetto farmer. Every single dollar came from the poverty mindset she was trying to escape. The room was completely silent. Even Ashley had stopped crying, just sat there, numb, destroyed, understanding finally the full scope of what she had done. So when I terminate these arrangements, when I end this support, I want to be very clear about why. It is not because I am cruel. It is not because I cannot afford to continue helping. I am worth $58 million. I can afford anything. I stepped out from behind the podium, stood in full view of everyone. I am ending it because Ashley Crawford Washington needs to learn that you do not get to use black people's history and struggle as content for your brand. You do not get to teach millions of people that black success is failure if it does not look white. You do not get to mock the survival strategies that kept black families alive and call it a poverty mindset. And you especially do not get to do all of that while living on black wealth, while being supported entirely by the very people you are teaching others to pity and dismiss. My voice rose, slightly more emotion coming through. She wanted to make content about escaping poverty. Now she gets to experience what poverty actually feels like. Without her parents' income, without her grandmother's care being funded, without her luxury apartment, without followers who will stick around once they know the truth. without brand deals from companies that do not want to be associated with racial stereotyping and exploitation. I walked back to the podium, picked up my briefcase. That is justice. Not revenge. Justice. Consequences that fit the crime. Education that comes from experience instead of theory. I looked out at the 380 faces staring back at me. Some sympathetic, some shocked, all understanding that they had witnessed something significant. My father told me once that the best way to fight racism is not with anger but with excellence. Build something so undeniable that assumptions become embarrassing for the people who made them. I built $58 million of undeniable, and tonight I used it to teach a lesson about what happens when you assume black equals poor, when you mock black wealth for not looking white, when you turn black struggle into your personal content strategy. I closed the briefcase one final time. This gala raises money for food banks and education. That is important work. The Washington Family Foundation will continue to be a platinum sponsor next year and every year after, $100,000 annually. Because my commitment to this community is not conditional on whether people respect me. It is based on whether the community needs help. I paused, looked directly at Ashley one last time. But my commitment to individual families is absolutely conditional. Conditional on respect, conditional on gratitude, conditional on not using my race and my family's history as entertainment for millions. I stepped away from the podium completely. Robert Collins returned, clearly shaken, not sure how to follow what had just happened. I walked back toward my table in the rear of the ballroom. The room stayed silent except for my footsteps. As I passed table 6, Ashley reached out like she might try to grab my arm, might try to say something. Lawrence pulled her hand back, shook his head. Not now, not here, maybe not ever. I kept walking, reached my table, sat down, picked up my water glass and took a drink like I had just given a routine donor speech instead of systematically dismantling someone's entire life in front of hundreds of witnesses. Robert tried to restart the program, stumbling over his words, saying something about moving forward with the silent auction. But nobody was paying attention. The entire room was buzzing with conversation, people processing what they had seen, pulling out phones, probably already texting friends and family about what had just happened. At table 6, Lawrence helped Ashley stand. She could barely walk, makeup destroyed, designer dress stained with champagne and tears. He guided her toward the exit, one arm around her waist supporting her weight. As they passed the staff area, Richard and Patricia stepped forward, but Lawrence shook his head at them too. Not now. The Crawford family left through different doors, Richard and Patricia through the staff entrance, already being escorted by Marcus, who would handle their termination paperwork. Lawrence and Ashley through the main entrance past hundreds of eyes watching their exit. The ballroom doors closed behind them with a soft click. And then the room exploded. Everyone talking at once, exclaiming, questioning, analyzing. 58 million. Did you know those videos were terrible? I saw them online. She was living in his building. This whole time. The grandmother's care. This is insane. That poor man. Not poor at all. Richest person in the county probably. The way she talked about black families. So problematic. She earned this. Absolutely earned it. I cannot believe what we just witnessed. I sat at my table and listened to it all. Watched 380 people process the education I had just delivered. Watched them understand, really understand what had been happening for 3 years while they scrolled past Ashley's videos without thinking too deeply about what she was really saying. Margaret Collins made her way over to my table. Samuel, I am so sorry. We had no idea. None of us knew. I smiled at her genuinely this time. That was the point, Margaret. Nobody knew. Because I built it that way. Quietly. Safely. The way my father taught me. What you did tonight, she said, sitting down without asking permission, that was not just about your daughter-in-law. That was about all of us. About what we assume when we see black people living simply. About what we teach ourselves to believe about black wealth. I nodded. Exactly. Ashley was just the example. The lesson is for everyone. And they will remember it, she said firmly. Everyone in this room will remember this night for the rest of their lives. Good, I said. That is exactly what I wanted. I stood up from my table. The room quieted immediately, everyone sensing there was more to come. I walked back to the podium slowly, deliberately. This was the part I had been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. the moment where words became action, where consequences moved from abstract to concrete. Robert Collins stepped aside without being asked. The room held its collective breath. "I have made several announcements tonight," I began, my voice carrying clearly across the ballroom. "About my assets, about my daughter-in-law's behavior, about the full scope of what has been happening for 3 years. But announcements without action are just words. So now I need to tell you what happens next." I pulled the stack of legal documents from my briefcase one more time. Each one signed, notarized, reviewed by attorneys. Everything legal, everything documented, everything justified. Effective immediately, the Washington Family Foundation is reassessing all charitable commitments and support arrangements. Recipients who have demonstrated ingratitude, disrespect, or racial prejudice toward the foundation or its leadership will have their funding redirected to more deserving causes. The room tensed. Everyone knew what was coming, but hearing it stated formally made it real. I held up the first document: employment termination notice for Richard Crawford, currently serving as golf course manager at Magnolia Hills Country Club. Effective Monday, October 15, 2024. Final employment date will be Friday, October 19th, to allow for transition of duties. Severance package of 3 months' salary totaling $16,000 will be issued per Georgia labor law requirements. Against the back wall, Richard's knees buckled. He grabbed onto Patricia to keep from falling. Other staff members moved closer, supporting them both. I held up the second document: employment termination notice for Patricia Crawford, currently serving as events coordinator at Magnolia Hills Country Club. Same effective dates, same severance terms, $12,000 reflecting 3 months of her annual salary. Patricia was crying openly now, her hand over her mouth, shoulders shaking. Another staff member, a woman named Denise who worked in catering, put her arm around Patricia's waist. I held up the third document. This one was harder to say out loud, even though I knew it was necessary. Funding termination notice for Barbara Crawford, currently receiving assisted living expense support at Sunset Manor. Washington Family Foundation contributions of $3,400 monthly will cease effective October 31st, 2024. The family will need to make alternative care arrangements beginning November 1st. Patricia let out a sound like something was breaking inside her. Richard pulled her close, both of them crying now, holding each other up. Someone in the audience I could not see who said quietly, "Oh God, that is someone's grandmother." I continued, my voice steady, even though this part hurt me too. Barbara Crawford is a wonderful woman by all accounts. She deserves dignity and care in her final years. But the Foundation's resources are not unlimited, and we must prioritize families who demonstrate respect and gratitude toward our mission and our leadership. I held up the fourth document: lease termination notice for Unit 14C at Park Vista Heights, currently occupied by Lawrence and Ashley Washington. Tenants are in violation of community standards clauses outlined in Section 12 of their lease agreement, specifically conduct that damages property reputation or brings negative attention to the building and its residents. Lease is hereby terminated effective immediately. Tenants have 72 hours to vacate the premises and remove all personal belongings. The audience gasped again. 72 hours. That meant Ashley and Lawrence would be packing their belongings tomorrow, Sunday, and Monday homeless by Tuesday afternoon if they did not find somewhere else to go. And finally, I held up the last document. This one I had debated including until the very end. Grant reevaluation notice for Riverside Academy. Due to conduct by immediate family members of school employees that directly conflicts with the Washington Family Foundation's core values of respect, dignity, and racial equality, the annual educational grant of $125,000 is hereby placed under formal review. Final funding decision will be made no later than November 1st, 2024. Pending discussions with school administration about family conduct policies for employees. This one hit different. This one affected children students who had nothing to do with what Ashley did, but it also affected Emily Crawford, who benefited from grant money while her sister used our family as content. The decision would depend on what happened next, on whether the Crawford family understood the lesson or just the punishment. I set all the documents down on the podium in a neat stack, looked out at the audience, then specifically at Richard and Patricia, still standing against the back wall. Richard, Patricia. I said their names clearly with respect. I need you to understand something. This is not about you. You are good people, good workers. You did nothing wrong except have a daughter who made terrible choices. Richard found his voice shaky and broken. Mr. Washington, sir, we had no idea. No idea it was you. No idea about any of it. We just thought you were. He could not finish the sentence. You thought I was a poor farmer. I finished for him. You thought your daughter was documenting real poverty. You thought you were working for some anonymous corporation. I know, Richard. That was intentional. All of it was designed so you would never know. Patricia stepped forward, wiping tears from her face. Please, Mr. Washington. My mother, she is 87. The county facility. It is not, we cannot afford. Her voice broke completely. I know, Patricia. I know what losing that support means. But your daughter knew too. She knew I was paying for Barbara's care. She had access to foundation letters. She saw the checks being deposited. And she still made videos calling me ghetto trash. Still taught millions of people that black farmers like me represent failure. Richard's face crumpled. She never told us. We never knew the foundation was yours. We never connected. We should have asked more questions. We should have, oh God, what has she done? She attacked the person who was supporting your entire family, I said quietly but firmly. She used my race and my choice to live simply as content to build her brand. She taught millions of people to mock black wealth that does not look the way she thinks wealth should look, all while living on $600,000 of my money. The room was silent except for the sound of Patricia and Richard crying. I understand that you did not know, I continued. I understand that you are not responsible for your adult daughter's choices. But I also have a responsibility to my foundation, to my businesses, to my community. I cannot continue supporting families who benefit from black wealth while attacking black success. Richard stood up straighter, trying to compose himself despite the tears. You are right, Mr. Washington. You are absolutely right. This is what she did is unforgivable. We failed. We failed to see what she was doing, failed to teach her better, failed to question where her assumptions were coming from. He looked at me directly, eyes red, but steady now. We do not deserve your charity. We do not deserve your mercy. What happens to us is what we earned by not raising her to see people as people instead of content. I nodded, acknowledging his words. That is the first honest thing anyone in your family has said to me in 3 years. I turned back to the full audience. You see, ladies and gentlemen, this is what happens when performed wealth meets authentic wealth, when social media followers try to compete with actual financial power, when someone uses racial stereotypes to mock the very person who has been keeping their entire family afloat for years. I paused, let that sink in completely. Wealth is not what you show, it is what you build. It is what you do when nobody is watching. It is how you help people without needing credit or recognition. My father taught me that. His father taught him that. 4 generations of Washington men built empires in silence because loud wealth got black families killed. We learned to survive by being underestimated, by letting people think we were poor while we accumulated millions. My voice grew stronger. And Ashley Crawford Washington saw that survival strategy, that wisdom born from necessity, and called it a poverty mindset, called it generational failure, called it everything wrong with black families. While she was living in my building, while her parents were working at my country club, while her grandmother was being cared for with my foundation's money, while her sister was teaching in a school I helped fund. I picked up my briefcase. $600,000. That is what her contempt cost me over 4 years. Now she gets to learn what losing that support actually means, what real poverty feels like. Not old furniture and store-brand milk, real poverty. No job for her parents, no care for her grandmother, no apartment. No brand deals once her followers understand what she did. No influencer career built on mocking black success. The room was completely still. And maybe, just maybe, she will learn something from it. Learn that assumptions based on race are dangerous. Learn that black wealth looks different because it had to. Learn that you do not mock the people who are helping you, especially when those people are from communities you claim to care about. I stepped away from the podium for the final time. That is justice, I said quietly. Not revenge, justice. For a moment, nothing happened. The room sat in stunned silence, processing everything they had witnessed. Then Robert Collins started to clap. Slowly at first, almost hesitantly. Then Margaret Collins joined him, standing as she clapped. Then another person stood. Then another. Within seconds, the entire ballroom was on its feet. 380 people standing, applauding, some crying, all understanding that they had just witnessed something historic. The ovation went on for 4 full minutes. I stood there and took it, not because I enjoyed the attention, but because I needed them to remember this moment, needed them to carry this lesson out into the world, needed them to think twice before assuming anything about black wealth or black success or black choices. Richard and Patricia stood against the back wall, not clapping, just holding each other and crying. They understood. Finally, completely, they understood what their daughter had done and what it cost. And somewhere in the parking lot, Ashley was probably sitting in her BMW makeup-destroyed designer dress, ruined everything she built, crumbling around her, learning what consequences actually feel like. The applause was still echoing when Ashley stumbled to her feet at table 6. Her designer dress was stained with champagne from the shattered glass, her $3,200 Valentino now ruined. Her makeup had run in dark streaks down her face, mascara and foundation mixing with tears. She looked nothing like the polished influencer who had walked in 2 hours ago. "Samuel, please." Her voice was hoarse, desperate. "I did not know. I swear to God I did not know any of this." I turned to face her fully. The room went silent again, everyone watching this final confrontation. "You did not know because you never asked Ashley. You assumed. You saw an old black man driving an old truck wearing work clothes living simply. And you assumed poverty. You assumed failure. You assumed I had nothing because that fit the narrative you wanted to tell. But I loved the farm," she said, her voice breaking. "I thought I was helping. I thought if we sold it, we could all have better lives." I took a step closer to her, and she actually flinched. "You thought you were helping. By calling me ghetto trash. By filming my refrigerator as evidence of generational poverty in the black community. By teaching 4 million people that black farmers like me are failures. I will delete everything," she said frantically. "Every video, every post, every comment. I will apologize publicly. I will tell everyone I was wrong. I will make it right. The damage is permanent, Ashley. You taught millions of people that successful black farmers are examples of poverty mindsets. That black wealth is not real wealth if it does not look white. That my father's generation that survived Jim Crow were failures for building quietly instead of showing off. You cannot delete that. You cannot apologize that away." "But my parents," she sobbed. "Please do not do this to my parents. They did not do anything. This is my fault, not theirs." I looked past her to where Richard and Patricia still stood against the wall, broken and crying. "3 years ago, I hired your parents when they needed work. I did it quietly through management companies because that is how I do charity. Without recognition, without gratitude required. Just helping people who need help." Ashley nodded desperately. "I know I understand now. Please just give them their jobs back. Punish me, not them. I am not punishing them, Ashley. I am ending support for a family whose daughter used my race and my generosity as content for millions. I never asked for thanks, never asked for recognition, but I also never tolerated disrespect. And I certainly do not subsidize people who call me ghetto trash on social media while living in my buildings and benefiting from $600,000 of my charity." She tried to move toward me, but Lawrence grabbed her arm, held her back. "Samuel, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. Sorry is what you say when you make a mistake," I told her. "What you did was not a mistake. It was calculated, deliberate, strategic. You built an entire brand on mocking black poverty while living on black wealth. You knew what you were doing." "I did not know it was your wealth," she cried. "If I had known, I never would have. I would never. I thought you were actually poor." "And there it is," I said quietly. "You thought I was actually poor, so that made it okay to mock me, to film my home as a poverty museum, to teach millions of people that black families who live simply have a poverty mindset. My wealth is the only thing that makes your behavior wrong." "No," she backpedaled. "No, that is not what I meant. I wanted to help people see what Ashley, help them see. That black success is only real if it looks like white success. Help them learn to judge black families by their furniture and their trucks instead of their actual achievements. Please," she whispered. "Please give me a chance to fix this. You had 3 years of chances. 3 years of me watching you mock my life while I paid for yours. 3 years of warnings you were too arrogant to see. The time for chances is over. The time for consequences is now." Lawrence stood up, then putting himself between me and Ashley. "Dad, I think we should go. She understands. We will deal with this at home." Ashley grabbed Lawrence's arm. her fingers digging into his jacket. "Lawrence, please, talk to him, make him understand. He is your father. He will listen to you." Lawrence looked down at his wife, and I saw something in his face I had not seen before. Disgust, disappointment, maybe even hate. "Steph," he said quietly, "you did this. Not Dad, you. Dad gave your family everything. Jobs, money, housing, care for your grandmother, everything. And you mocked him for sport. You used his race and his family's history to build your social media brand. You taught millions of people to see black success as failure. You did that. But I did not know," she repeated for the 100th time. "That is exactly the problem," Lawrence said, his voice getting harder. "You did not know because you did not bother to know. You made assumptions based on what you saw. An old black man with an old truck. And you decided that was enough information to judge his entire life, to film his home, to mock his choices, to build content around his supposed poverty." He stepped back from her, letting go of her hand. "You used racial stereotypes to build your brand. You did it on my father's back, on my family's history, on my grandparents' survival. And now you want me to save you from the consequences." She stared at him. Makeup-smeared dress ruined everything, falling apart. "Lawrence, I am your wife." "You are," he said simply. "And that is something I am going to have to think about very carefully in the coming days." The room was silent. Even the servers had stopped moving. Everyone watched this family implode in real time. "We need to leave," Lawrence said to Ashley. "Now, before this gets any worse." He took her arm, not gently, and started guiding her toward the main entrance. She could barely walk, stumbling in her expensive heels, sobbing with every step. The room parted for them like the Red Sea, everyone stepping back to let them pass. Their footsteps echoed on the marble floor, click, click, click of her designer shoes, the sound of everything falling apart. As they reached the doors, 2 security guards Marcus had stationed there earlier stepped forward, not to stop them but to escort them to their vehicle, making sure they left the property, making sure there would be no scene in the parking lot. The doors closed behind them with a soft final sound. Robert Collins returned to the podium, his face still showing shock at what had just unfolded in his ballroom. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice not quite steady, let us hear it one more time for authentic generosity and appropriate boundaries." The room erupted in applause again, louder this time, more sustained. People were not just clapping for me anymore. They were clapping for the lesson, for the justice, for watching someone who thought they were untouchable learn what real consequences looked like. I returned to my table and sat down, picked up my water glass with steady hands, took a drink like my heart was not pounding, like adrenaline was not flooding my system, like I had not just destroyed 3 lives in 15 minutes. Margaret Collins appeared beside me again. "That took courage, Samuel. That took necessity," I corrected. "Courage is when you have a choice. I did not have a choice. If I let this go unpunished, I would be telling every young person watching that it is okay to use people's race as content, that it is okay to mock black families for not displaying wealth the right way, that there are no consequences for teaching millions of people to see black success as black failure." She nodded, understanding. "You did the right thing, the hard thing and the right thing." "I hope so," I said quietly. "I really hope so. Because 3 generations of Crawfords were about to learn what poverty actually felt like. And 1 generation of Washingtons was about to learn whether strategic patience and public justice were worth the personal cost." Outside in the parking lot, Ashley was probably sitting in her BMW crying. Lawrence was probably silent, processing whether his marriage could survive this. And somewhere in my chest, despite everything, I felt a small ache of regret. Not for what I did, but for the fact that it had to be done at all. Monday, October 15th. The consequences rolled out exactly as I promised, exactly as Ashley earned. Richard and Patricia Crawford received their final paychecks at 8 a.m. Marcus delivered them personally, along with the formal termination letters and severance documentation. 3 years and 7 months of employment ended in a manila envelope handed over in the club's administrative office. Richard tried to shake Marcus's hand. Marcus hesitated, then shook it, but his face was uncomfortable. Everyone at the club knew what had happened. Word had spread overnight. By 9 a.m., my voicemail had 6 messages, all from Richard or Patricia, voices shaking, begging me to reconsider. "Mr. Washington, this is Richard Crawford. Please, sir, if you could just call me back. We need to talk about this. We did not know." She is our daughter, but we did not know what she was doing. Please. Patricia's message was worse. Mr. Washington, I am begging you. My mother, she cannot. The county facility is not equipped for her needs. She needs private care, specialized attention. Please do not punish her for what Ashley did. Please, I will do anything. We will do anything. I listened to all 6 messages, saved them for documentation, did not return a single call. Not because I was cruel, but because there was nothing left to say. The decision was made. The consequences were earned. Calling them back would only give false hope or make them think negotiation was possible. It was not. Tuesday, October 16th. Barbara Crawford was moved from Sunset Manor to Greene County Assisted Living Facility. I did not witness it personally, but Patricia called again this time, just sobbing into my voicemail for 40 seconds before hanging up. Later, I heard the details from someone who worked at the county facility. The transition was devastating. Barbara went from a private room with garden views, personal nursing attention activities, coordinator, fresh flowers every week, to a shared ward with 3 other residents. The room smelled like disinfectant and regret, someone told me later. Industrial floor cleaner mixed with the particular scent of elderly people who were not being cared for quite carefully enough. The staff was overworked, understaffed, doing their best with insufficient resources. Barbara's bed was by the window at least, but the window looked out at a parking lot, not a garden. Patricia visited for 4 hours on Tuesday afternoon. Brought Barbara's favorite blanket from home, the one that did not fit with county facility regulations, but the staff let her keep anyway because they felt sorry for the family. Barbara did not understand what was happening or why she had to leave her beautiful room at Sunset Manor. Patricia tried to explain without mentioning Ashley's name, but Barbara was not stupid despite her age. She put the pieces together, asked if this was because of the videos. Patricia just cried. Wednesday, October 17th. The 72-hour eviction notice expired. Lawrence and Ashley had until 5 p.m. to be completely moved out of Unit 14C at Park Vista Heights or face legal action and having their belongings removed to storage at their expense. I did not go to watch them move out, but the property manager sent me updates. They started packing Sunday night after the gala, both of them working in silence, filling boxes with everything they had accumulated over 2 years. The designer clothes, the kitchen gadgets, the furniture they had bought thinking they were building a life. All of it going into cardboard boxes and being carried down 8 flights of stairs because Ashley could not stand to ride the elevator with neighbors who had definitely heard what happened by now. Their combined income was now just Lawrence's $78,000 engineering salary. Good money for most people. Enough to live comfortably in a modest apartment to pay bills to save a little, but not enough for the lifestyle Ashley had been performing. Not enough for luxury high-rises and designer wardrobes and the constant consumption her influencer brand required. They moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in a complex on the east side of Athens. Rent $1,200 a month. No doorman, no rooftop pool, no marble lobby. Just a standard apartment in a standard building where nobody knew who they were and nobody cared about their drama. A come-down so steep it must have felt like falling off a cliff. But the physical consequences were nothing compared to what was happening online. The social media explosion started Saturday morning when someone at the gala posted about what they witnessed. By Sunday afternoon, it had gone viral. By Monday, it was everywhere. Ashley's old videos were being found downloaded, reshared with new context. Someone created a compilation of every time she mentioned race or poverty in the black community, every time she called me poor or mocked the farm. The compilation had been viewed 800,000 times by Monday evening. The comments section was absolutely brutal. This aged like milk in the Georgia sun. 3,000 likes. Imagine calling your multimillionaire black father-in-law ghetto while living in his building. The caucasity is truly unreal. 7,000 likes. She said poverty mindset in the black community while living off a black man's $58 million charity. I cannot breathe. This is too much. 9,000 likes. Poor farmer owns $58 million. Poor influencer about to learn what actual poverty looks like. Welcome to consequences, Ashley. 12,000 likes. The way she used his race as content. The way she taught millions of people that black success is failure if it does not look white. This is exactly why we need to talk about digital blackface and racial exploitation. 5,000 likes. Someone found her Amazon wishlist still public showing items totaling over $40,000. Posted screenshots with the caption, "She called him poor while wishing for a Cartier bracelet. Make it make sense." Another person did a deep dive into her spending, calculating that her outfits in her last 10 videos alone totaled over $60,000. Posted side by side with clips of her calling my family examples of generational poverty. The ratio was insane. Every supportive comment was getting destroyed with replies. Every person who tried to defend her got educated real fast about what she had actually done. Ashley tried damage control on Saturday night. Posted a Notes app apology to her Instagram story. "I want to sincerely apologize for any hurt I have caused. I made assumptions based on limited information, and I was wrong. I am taking time to reflect and learn from this situation. It got screenshot and torn apart within minutes. Any hurt you taught 4 million people to mock black farmers. Limited information. You lived in his building for 2 years. Taking time to reflect. You are taking time because you lost everything." By Monday morning, she started deleting. First, TikTok disappeared completely. Her account with 127,000 followers, 3 years of content, millions of views, gone. Then Instagram, then Facebook. Every platform she had used to build her brand deleted in a panic. But the internet never forgets. Everything had been archived, every video saved, every comment screenshot. Deleting just made it worse because now she looked like she was trying to hide evidence instead of actually being sorry. Her follower count across remaining platforms collapsed. 127,000 followers to 4,800 by Monday afternoon, 3,200 by Tuesday evening. By Wednesday, brands were publicly cutting ties. The skincare company that sponsored her posted, "We do not align with creators who engage in racial stereotyping or exploitation. Our partnership with Ashley Crawford Washington has been terminated effective immediately." The fashion brand followed. "Our values include respect, dignity, and equality. We cannot support content that mocks or diminishes any community. We have ended all collaborations with this creator." Every single brand deal Ashley had gone in 72 hours. Every partnership terminated. Every affiliate link deactivated. The income stream she had built over 3 years dried up overnight. Local news picked it up first. Atlanta News Now ran a segment "Influencers Farm Shaming Campaign Backfires Spectacularly." They interviewed people from Greene County, showed clips of Ashley's videos side by side with property records showing my businesses. The journalist, a black woman named Tracy Williams, did not hold back. "This is a clear case of racial stereotyping used for profit." Ashley Crawford Washington saw a black farmer living modestly in assumed poverty, never considering that black wealth often looks different because it has to. She built a brand mocking what she did not understand, and now she is learning what real consequences look like. By Wednesday, national media was calling. CNN wanted to do a segment about assumptions about black wealth. The Breakfast Club wanted me to come on and tell the story. Roland Martin wanted an interview. Good Morning America reached out through 3 different channels. I declined every single one. This was not about publicity. This was not about revenge. This was about education, and the education was already happening. Millions of people were learning the lesson Ashley was supposed to teach herself. The difference between performed wealth and real wealth. The danger of assumptions based on race. The way black success gets dismissed and mocked when it does not look white. The Washington Post ran an op-ed, "The Hidden Wealth of Black Farmers and Why We Need to Stop Assuming Poverty." Medium was flooded with think pieces about digital exploitation and racial stereotyping. Twitter threads analyzed every aspect of what happened, breaking down the economics, the psychology, the history of why black families build wealth quietly. Ashley had wanted to be famous for talking about poverty. Now she was famous for being destroyed by the wealth she mocked. She had wanted to teach people about generational cycles. Now she was teaching them about consequences, assumptions, and what happens when you use someone's race as content for millions. 3 days. That was all it took for Ashley Crawford Washington's life to completely collapse. Job prospects gone, influencer career destroyed, reputation in ruins. Marriage probably ending based on what Lawrence told me in our brief phone call Tuesday night. Everything she built gone. And somewhere in a county facility that smelled like disinfectant, Barbara Crawford was learning that her granddaughter's cruelty had cost her the dignity of private care in her final years. 3 days of consequences for 3 years of mockery. Mathematics that seemed fair to me. Justice that felt earned. The fallout was not over, not even close. But the first wave had hit exactly as hard as I intended. Education in progress, lesson being learned, consequences being felt. Friday evening, October 19th, 5 days after the gala. I was in the barn doing what I always did when the world got complicated. Working with my hands, reviewing ledgers, finding comfort in the simple mathematics of crops and soil and honest labor. The sun was setting through the western window when I heard footsteps on the gravel outside. Slow, hesitant steps. I knew who it was before the door opened. Lawrence stood in the doorway, backlit by the orange sunset. He looked exhausted. Dark circles under his eyes, face thinner somehow, like he had aged 5 years in 5 days. He wore jeans and a t-shirt, work clothes, not the business casual he usually favored. Coming home to his roots. "Dad," he said quietly, "can we talk?" I set down my pencil. "Of course we can, son. Pull up that stool." He sat on the same 3-legged stool he had used as a kid, the one that wobbled if you did not sit right. He sat carefully, found the balance, and then just looked at me for a long moment. "I owe you an apology," he finally said. "For what?" "For not standing up sooner. For letting her disrespect you for 3 years. For not seeing what she was doing, or worse, seeing it and not having the courage to stop it. For letting her use racial stereotypes about our family to build her brand. For," his voice cracked, "for choosing her comfort over your dignity." I leaned back in my chair, the one my father sat in for 40 years. "Marriage is complicated, son. Loyalty gets tested. You love someone, you want to believe the best about them. You want to think their intentions are good, even when their actions are not. I do not blame you for that. But I should have known better." Lawrence's hands gripped his knees. "I am a black man married to a white woman. I should have been more aware, more careful, more willing to call out the things she said about black families, about poverty in the black community, about you specifically. You chose correctly when it mattered," I told him. "At the gala, when she wanted you to defend her, you stood with me. You told her the truth. That matters more than 3 years of mistakes." He nodded, but did not look convinced. "What happens now? With me and Ashley? With everything?" I took a breath. "Now you decide whether you are married to someone who loves you or someone who loved your potential status and used your blackness as content for her brand." Lawrence flinched. "That is harsh. Is it true?" He thought about it for a long time. The barn was quiet except for the sound of birds settling in for the night outside. "I do not know anymore," he finally said. "I thought she loved me. I thought she respected our family. But looking back at those videos, at the way she talked about you, about generational poverty in the black community, I keep asking myself if she ever saw me as anything other than proof that she was not racist. A black husband she could point to while making content that taught millions of people to mock black success. That is a question only you can answer," I said gently. "What does Ashley say?" "She wants to go to counseling, says she can change, says she understands now what she did wrong. She cries every day. Has not left the apartment except to help her parents move Barbara's things to the county facility. People can change," I said. "But they have to want to change for the right reasons. Not just because they got caught. Not just because they lost everything. They have to want to change because they understand why what they did was wrong." "Does Ashley understand?" Lawrence was quiet. "I do not think so. Not really. She keeps saying she did not know you were rich. Like that is the problem. Like mocking black farmers is fine as long as they are actually poor. She does not get that the wealth is not the point. The point is, she saw a black man living simply and assumed it meant poverty. She saw black success that did not look white and decided it was failure. She used our history, our survival strategies, our choices to build quietly as content, as entertainment, as proof that black families have a poverty mindset that needs to be escaped." He looked up at me with wet eyes, and I let her. For 3 years I let her do that to you, to us." I stood up, walked around the desk, put my hand on his shoulder. "You were trying to make your marriage work. That is not a sin, Lawrence. The sin was hers, not yours." "What about her family?" he asked. "Richard and Patricia. They are good people, Dad. They really are. They did not know. They did not deserve this." "You are right," I said. "They did not deserve what their daughter did to them. They are victims of Ashley's choices as much as I am. Maybe more because they lost their jobs and their mother's care without even understanding why until it was too late." I walked over to my filing cabinet, pulled out a business card I had been keeping ready for this conversation. Handed it to Lawrence. Tell Richard to call me next week. I know someone who needs a golf course manager at a property in Putnam County. Someone who appreciates loyalty and discretion and understands that good workers should not be punished for their children's mistakes. Lawrence stared at the card. Really? You would help them after everything I am punishing Ashley's behavior, not her family. That is the difference between justice and revenge, son. Revenge destroys everyone connected to the target. Justice targets the behavior and tries to restore what was broken everywhere else. Lawrence stood up, put the card in his pocket carefully like it was made of gold. What about Barbara? Is there anything we can do about her care? I thought about that, not through the foundation. That would set a bad precedent teaching people they can disrespect benefactors and still keep charity flowing. But there might be other options. I know people who run better county facilities, places where she could get more dignified care even within the public system. I can make some calls, not as a benefactor, just as someone who knows people. Thank you, Lawrence whispered. Thank you for not hating all of us. I do not hate anyone. I said honestly, I am disappointed. I am hurt. I am angry at what Ashley did and how long it went on. But hate, no. Hate takes too much energy and accomplishes nothing. I would rather put that energy into teaching the lesson and helping the innocent people caught in the fallout. We stood there in the barn office, 4 generations of Washington men represented in that space. My great-grandfather who survived slavery, my grandfather who survived Jim Crow, my father who bought this land and built this barn, me who built the empire, and Lawrence who would decide what came next. What are you going to do about Ashley? I asked quietly. I do not know yet. Lawrence rubbed his face. Part of me wants to save the marriage, work through this, believe she can change. But another part of me knows that even if she changes, even if she learns and grows and becomes a better person, I will never forget what she said about you, about us, about black families. I will never unhear those videos or unsee the way she looked at your life and called it poverty. How do you come back from that? You might not, I said honestly. And that is okay, son. Some things break beyond repair. Some betrayals are too deep. You are allowed to decide this is one of them. He nodded slowly. Can I stay here for a while? At the farm, I need time to think, time away from her to figure out what I actually want instead of what I think I should want. Of course. Your room is exactly how you left it. Stay as long as you need. Lawrence hugged me, then tight and desperate like a child instead of a 28-year-old man. I hugged him back, let him cry on my shoulder, let him release 3 years of tension and confusion and pain. I am sorry, Dad, he said into my shoulder. I am so sorry for all of it. I know, son, I know. But sorry does not fix what broke. Only time and better choices can do that. And you are making better choices now. That is what matters. We stood there until the sun finished setting and the barn went dark except for the small desk lamp, father and son. 4 generations of survival and success and quiet wealth, figuring out how to move forward after betrayal, how to rebuild after destruction, how to choose justice over revenge and still protect what mattered. Lawrence would figure out his marriage or he would not. Either way, he would be okay. Because he came from people who survived worse, people who built empires from nothing, people who knew that real strength was not about showing off, but about showing up, doing the work, building in silence until the moment came to speak. And when that moment came, making sure every word counted. Week 2 after the gala, the story went fully national. What started as local gossip in Greene County became a case study in racial stereotyping, social media exploitation, and the assumptions people make about black wealth. CNN ran a segment on Thursday, October 25th. I watched it from my kitchen table, coffee in hand, curious how they would frame what happened. The segment was called Racial Stereotyping and Social Media, the Washington Case, and it was surprisingly thoughtful. The anchor, a black woman named Kendra Hayes, introduced it with gravity. Tonight we examine a story that has captivated social media and raised important questions about assumptions, race, and the performance of wealth in digital spaces. Samuel Washington, a 75-year-old black farmer from Georgia, was mocked for years by his white daughter-in-law, who built a social media brand around documenting what she called generational poverty in the black community. What she did not know was that Washington owns a $58 million agricultural empire. They showed clips of Ashley's videos, her talking about poverty mindsets and old black farmers hoarding land. Then they cut to property records, business valuations, the deed for Magnolia Hills Country Club. The contrast was devastating even in a news format, Kendra continued. This case highlights a persistent problem. The assumption that black people living modestly are poor, while white people living modestly are frugal. The assumption that black wealth must look a certain way, or it does not exist. And perhaps most troubling, the way white influencers can build profitable brands by exploiting narratives about black poverty, often while benefiting from black wealth themselves. They interviewed a sociology professor from Emory who talked about respectability politics and the double standards black families face. If they show wealth, they are criticized for being flashy or not investing in their communities. If they live modestly, they are assumed to be poor and used as cautionary tales. They cannot win. The segment ended with Kendra looking directly into the camera. Samuel Washington declined our interview requests, which is his right, but his silence speaks volumes. He does not owe the world his story. He does not owe anyone an explanation for how he built his wealth or why he chose to keep it private. What he did was teach a very public lesson about consequences, and perhaps that is the only statement he needs to make. I turned off the TV. She got it exactly right. The next day, the Breakfast Club morning show dedicated 30 minutes to discussing the story. Charlemagne the God, Angela Yee, and DJ Envy went in on Ashley with the kind of ruthless commentary that made me laugh despite everything. Yo, when keeping it real goes wrong, Charlemagne started. This woman really spent 3 years calling her rich father-in-law poor while living in his building. You cannot make this up. The caucasity, Angela Yee added. The absolute caucasity of seeing a black man with an old truck and deciding his whole life is a poverty museum, never considering that maybe, just maybe, he built wealth quietly because that is how black people had to survive. They played clips of Ashley's videos, pausing to react in real time. Hold up, Charlemagne interrupted. She said poverty mindset in the black community, while wearing what $2,000 worth of clothes, and she did not think to ask where the money was coming from. DJ Envy brought up the numbers. $58 million. This man owns $58 million and nobody knew because he was smart enough to keep it quiet. That is generational wealth done right. Not flashing it, not announcing it, just building it and protecting it and using it to help people without needing credit. The conversation shifted to broader issues. Why black farmers are systematically undervalued. Why assumptions about black poverty persist even when the evidence contradicts them. Why social media has made it profitable to exploit narratives about struggling communities without actually understanding those communities. This is why we need to stop teaching people that visible wealth is the only real wealth, Angela Yee said. Samuel Washington is richer than 99% of the people who will mock him for driving an old truck. But he knows something they do not. Quiet wealth lasts. Flash wealth disappears. And the people who underestimate you because you do not perform wealth the way they expect, those are the people you can educate when the time comes. Exactly, Charlemagne agreed. And he educated the hell out of this woman in front of 300 people at an event he sponsors. That is legendary level pettiness. I respect it completely. Roland Martin posted a 15-minute video essay that went viral. This is why you do not make assumptions about black wealth. The title was direct, no sugarcoating. He sat at his desk, looked directly into the camera, and broke down the entire situation with receipts and context. Samuel Washington represents something that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. Black wealth that does not need validation. Black success that does not perform for white approval. Black power that operates in silence until it decides to speak. And when it spoke, it destroyed someone who thought she was untouchable. Roland pulled up Ashley's videos, her talking about poverty mindsets and generational limitations. Listen to the language she uses. Old black farmers hoarding land. The poverty mindset that gets passed down in black families. Generational poverty in the black community. Every single video centered blackness as the problem, never considering that maybe the problem was her assumptions, her ignorance, her willingness to use black people as content without doing the work to understand them. He leaned forward, intensity building. And here is what kills me. She was living off this man's money, $600,000 in support to her family, living in his building, her parents working at his club, her grandmother being cared for with his charity, all while teaching 4 million people that he represented failure. That is not ignorance, that is exploitation with a smile. The video ended with a direct message. To all the white influencers out there making content about black communities, black poverty, black anything, ask yourself this question. Are you helping or are you exploiting? Are you amplifying black voices or are you profiting from black pain? Because if you are building your brand on our backs, you better hope we do not decide to stand up. Because when we do that, fall is going to hurt. 300,000 views in 2 days. The comments section was full of black people sharing their own stories of being underestimated, assumed poor, judged by their appearance instead of their bank accounts. Meanwhile, Ashley tried damage control that only made things worse. She posted an apology video to her close friends list on Instagram. Just 27 people, but one of them screen recorded it and leaked it within hours. The video showed Ashley in her new apartment, no makeup, hair unwashed, clearly destroyed. I want to apologize to Samuel Washington and his family for the hurt I caused, she said, voice breaking. I did not mean for any of this to happen. I was trying to document my experience to share my journey, and I made mistakes. Big mistakes. But it was never about race. It was never about attacking black families or perpetuating stereotypes. I was just sharing what I saw. The leaked video spread across Twitter within minutes. The responses were brutal. Girl, you literally said poverty mindset in the black community in like 12 different videos. How was that not about race? It was never about race, she says, after building her entire brand on race. Now you know what real consequences look like. I did not mean to is what people say when they get caught. You meant to for 3 years. You meant to every time you filmed his house. You meant to every time you called him poor while cashing checks that came from his businesses. Someone did a supercut of every time Ashley said the words black or black community or black families in her videos. It was 6 minutes long. 6 minutes of her centering race in her content while now claiming it was never about race. Think pieces flooded Medium and Twitter. Journalists, activists, academics, everyone had something to say about what happened. The Hidden Wealth of Black Farmers became a widely shared essay about how agricultural wealth in black communities gets systematically undervalued and overlooked. It talked about land loss discrimination and the strategies black farmers developed to protect themselves by appearing less successful than they were. How white influencers exploit black poverty narratives, examined the trend of white content creators building brands around documenting poverty struggle or dysfunction in black communities while positioning themselves as educators or allies. The essay called it digital colonialism with a social justice aesthetic. The danger of assuming black equals poor looked at statistical data showing that assumptions about black wealth are consistently wrong, that black millionaires are growing faster than any other demographic, but that they hide their wealth at higher rates due to safety concerns and historical trauma. Generational wealth exists in black communities. You just do not see it. Went viral with over 2 million reads. It talked about how black families pass down wealth differently than white families. Less in trusts and stock portfolios, more in land and businesses and community infrastructure, less visible, but no less real. The conversation had moved beyond Ashley and me. We were just the example, the case study, the teachable moment that forced people to examine their own assumptions about what black success looked like and why those assumptions existed in the first place. By the end of week 2, I had 17 interview requests. CNN wanted an exclusive. The Breakfast Club wanted me to come on and tell the story myself. Roland Martin wanted a sit-down. Good Morning America. The View. NPR. Local news. National news. Everyone wanted a piece of the story. I declined every single one. Sent polite emails through my lawyer. Thank you for the interest, but Mr. Washington prefers to keep his private life private. He has said what he needed to say and considers the matter closed. Because it was not about publicity. It was never about publicity. It was about teaching Ashley a lesson and, by extension, teaching everyone watching that same lesson. The lesson was taught. The education was happening. Millions of people were examining their assumptions about black wealth, black farmers, black success. My job was done. But Ashley's nightmare was just beginning. Lawrence moved back to the farm on October 22nd. Packed his things while Ashley was out, left a note saying he needed space to think, to figure out who he was outside of their marriage. He took the guest room upstairs, the one that used to be his childhood bedroom. Spent his evenings on the porch with me talking about everything and nothing, processing 3 years of his life that now looked completely different in retrospect. Ashley moved in with her parents on October 24th. Richard and Patricia had downsized to a small 2-bedroom apartment after losing their jobs. 3 adults in 900 square feet, tension thick enough to cut, Richard barely speaking to his daughter, Patricia crying at random moments when the weight of everything hit her again. On November 1st, exactly 3 weeks after the gala, Lawrence filed for divorce. He did it quietly through a lawyer, no drama. The papers cited irreconcilable differences, which was technically true, though it did not capture the full scope of what had broken between them. Ashley did not contest it, did not fight, just signed the papers when they arrived and sent them back. Maybe she understood that some things could not be saved, or maybe she was just too exhausted to fight anymore. Either way, by early November, the consequences were complete. Jobs lost, wealth exposed, marriage ended, reputation destroyed, brand obliterated. Everything Ashley built over 3 years gone in 3 weeks, and 4 million people had learned a lesson about assumptions, race, and the danger of using other people's struggles as content for profit. Education delivered, lesson learned, justice served. The only question left was whether anything good could come from the rubble. 3 weeks after the gala, my phone rang at 6 in the morning. Unknown number. I almost did not answer, but something told me to pick up. It went to voicemail while I was deciding. Mr. Washington, this is Richard Crawford. The voice was shaking, barely holding together. I do not even know what to say. Patricia and we are devastated. Completely devastated. We raised her better than this. I promise you we did. We taught her to respect people, to see people, not as content or stereotypes, or God, I do not even know what she was thinking. There was a long pause. Breathing, the sound of someone trying not to cry. We are so sorry. So incredibly sorry. Not because we lost our jobs, though, that has been hard. Not because of the money, though we are struggling. But because someone we raised, someone we loved and supported and tried to teach right from wrong, hurt you so badly. Used your family, your history, your generosity as material for her brand. I am ashamed. Patricia is ashamed. We do not know how to fix this or if it even can be fixed, but I needed you to know that we are sorry. So sorry. The voicemail ended. I sat there in my kitchen as the sun came up over the fields, holding the phone, thinking about Richard and Patricia Crawford. Good people caught in their daughter's wreckage. Victims almost as much as I was. Almost. I called him back at 8. Richard picked up on the first ring. Mr. Washington. Richard, meet me at the farm Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Do not bring Patricia yet. Just you. Saturday morning arrived cold and clear. November in Georgia, the air crisp, the trees mostly bare. I was in the barn when Richard's car pulled up at 8:55. He was early. Nervous people always are. He walked into the barn slowly, like he was approaching a judge for sentencing. Wore clean clothes but nothing fancy. Jeans, a button-down shirt, work boots. His face was thinner than I remembered. Stress and unemployment and shame wearing him down. Mr. Washington, he said, stopping a respectful distance from my desk. Thank you for seeing me. I do not expect forgiveness. I just wanted to say in person what I said in that voicemail. We are sorry. We failed. As parents. As people who benefited from your kindness without even knowing it. Good, I said, not unkindly. Because forgiveness is earned, not given. And you have not earned it yet. Richard nodded, taking the words like he expected them. I understand. Sit down, Richard. I gestured to the stool. We need to talk. He sat carefully, hands gripping his knees, waiting for whatever came next. You and Patricia are good workers, I began. Loyal, professional. You did your jobs well at the country club. Treated members with respect. Managed your teams effectively. No complaints about your actual work in 3.5 years. Richard looked confused, not sure where this was going. Washington Organic Farms needs operations managers. 2 positions. One for agricultural operations overseeing the day-to-day of planting, harvesting, distribution. One for business operations handling accounts, vendor relationships, regulatory compliance. Both positions require people who understand hard work, attention to detail, and loyalty. I pulled out 2 folders I had prepared. Opened them. Richard, you would be agricultural operations manager. Salary $72,000 annually. Patricia would be business operations manager. Salary $58,000 annually. Both positions include housing on the property. There is a cottage about a quarter mile from the main house. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, fully furnished. You would live there rent-free as part of compensation. Richard's mouth opened, but no sound came out. His eyes were filling with tears. "I do not understand," he finally managed. "After what Ashley did, after everything, you want to give us jobs." "I am hiring you back," I corrected. "Different capacity, different business, but same principle. Good workers deserve good jobs." "But why?" Richard's voice broke. "We do not deserve this. Our daughter destroyed you on social media, mocked your family, used racial stereotypes to build her brand, and she did it while we were working for you, living on your charity. How can you possibly want to help us after that?" I leaned back in my chair. "Because your daughter's actions are not yours, Richard. You did not know what she was doing. You did not know I owned the club. You did not know I was funding your mother-in-law's care. The whole system was designed so you would not know. You cannot be blamed for ignorance I intentionally created." "But we should have seen it," he said. "Should have questioned where the money was coming from. Should have asked Ashley harder questions about her content. We failed. Maybe. But failure is not the same as malice. You failed to see what your daughter was doing. She chose to do it. Those are different things." I stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the fields. "You need to understand something, Richard. I helped your family because that is what neighbors do. That is what community means. I did not do it for recognition or gratitude. I did it because you needed help and I had resources. Simple as that." I turned back to face him. Black folks have always helped each other survive. Had to. When the systems were designed to keep us down, we built our own systems. Hired each other, housed each other, fed each other, created networks of support that let us accumulate wealth even when the broader society said we could not. That help did not always stay within the black community. Sometimes it extended to white families who needed it too, because survival is not about race, it is about humanity. Richard was crying now, not trying to hide it. Your daughter took that help and weaponized it, used racial stereotypes for clicks, taught millions of people that black farmers like me represent failure, built a brand on mocking what she did not understand. That is what I cannot forgive easily. That is what earned the consequences she received. I sat back down. But you and Patricia, you did not know. Now you do. Now you understand that the old black farmer you felt sorry for was actually the person keeping your family afloat. That changes things, does it not? Richard nodded, wiping his face with his sleeve. Changes everything. So here is the deal. You work hard, stay loyal, show up every day and do the job right. And you teach your daughter, if she is willing to learn, that black success comes in many forms, that wealth does not have to be visible to be real, that assumptions based on race are not just wrong, they are dangerous. Can you do that? Yes, sir. Richard's voice was firm now, steady despite the tears. Yes, we can do that. I handed him the employment contracts. Start date is Monday, November 5th. Health insurance kicks in on day 1. Retirement contributions start after 90 days. You can move into the cottage this weekend if you want. Keys are with Marcus at the club. He will get them to you. Richard took the contracts with shaking hands. Mr. Washington, I do not know how to thank you. Do not thank me yet. Earn it. Prove I made the right choice giving you a second chance. I will. We will. I promise you. One more thing, I said, my voice getting harder. Barbara's care. I had been thinking about this for days, weighing options. Richard's face fell. He thought I was about to tell him his mother-in-law would stay in the county facility with no help. I cannot reinstate full foundation support. That would set a bad precedent. But I can do something else. I have contacts at a better county facility, one with more resources and better staffing. I can get Barbara transferred there. And the foundation can provide a supplemental payment of $1,200 monthly to cover enhanced care options within the county system. Not the private room at Sunset Manor, but significantly better than where she is now. Richard started crying again, harder this time. Thank you. Thank you so much. Patricia has been so worried about her mother. The current facility, it is not good enough. Mom deserves better. She does, and she will get it. But Richard, there is one condition for all of this. The jobs, the housing, the care supplement. One non-negotiable condition. Anything, Richard said immediately. Name it. Ashley never sets foot on Washington property again. Not the farm. Not any property I own. Not the club. Not the rental properties. Nowhere. If she visits you at the cottage, you meet her in town. If she wants to see you, it happens off my land. That boundary is permanent. Richard nodded without hesitation. Understood. Completely understood. That is more than fair. I stood up, extended my hand. He stood too, took it. We shook, and I saw in his eyes that he meant every word, that he understood the gift he was being given and the responsibility that came with it. Tell Patricia to come by Monday morning, 8 a.m. We will get her set up with accounts and systems. You come at 7. I want to show you the operation before the crews arrive. Yes, sir. We will be here. Richard left walking taller than when he arrived, despite the tears still drying on his face. I watched him drive away, then sat back down at my desk. 4 generations of Washington men had sat in this chair. 4 generations who understood that justice was not about destruction. It was about restoration, where possible consequences were necessary, and wisdom to know the difference. Richard and Patricia Crawford had been collateral damage in their daughter's war against my dignity. They did not deserve permanent punishment. They deserved a chance to rebuild, to prove they understood the lesson, to contribute to something bigger than themselves. Ashley had made her choices. She would live with those consequences for the rest of her life. But her parents, they got a second chance. Not because I was soft, but because I was fair. That was the difference between revenge and justice. Revenge destroys everyone in its path. Justice targets the guilty and tries to restore the innocent. Monday morning, Richard and Patricia Crawford would start their new jobs at Washington Organic Farms, working for the man their daughter had called ghetto trash. Learning every day that black wealth was real even when it did not announce itself. Teaching themselves and hopefully eventually their daughter that assumptions kill, humility saves, and respect is not optional. The Crawford redemption had begun. Whether it would succeed was up to them. October 12, 2025. Exactly 1 year after everything changed. The Magnolia Hills Country Club looked the same as it had that night. Crystal chandeliers, autumn flowers, string quartet playing in the corner. 380 guests in formal wear champagne, flowing the air thick with money and carefully maintained appearances. But everything was different. I arrived at 7, same rented tuxedo from the same shop, same 15-year-old dress shoes, same 1988 Ford F-150 in the parking lot. Some things did not need to change just because the world knew about them now. I was still Samuel Washington, still a farmer, still a man who believed that wealth was about what you did, not what you showed. Lawrence arrived at 7:15 with his girlfriend, a woman named Keisha, who taught 5th grade at Riverside Academy. She was beautiful, smart, grounded in a way that made me understand why my son had chosen her. They had been dating for 6 months, taking it slow, building something real, instead of performing a relationship for an audience that did not exist anymore. Lawrence introduced us at the entrance. "Dad, this is Keisha. Keisha, this is my father, Samuel." "Mr. Washington," she said, shaking my hand firmly. "I have heard so much about you. It is an honor to finally meet you. Call me Samuel, and the honor is mine. Any woman who can put up with my son deserves respect." She laughed, genuine and warm. Lawrence looked happier than I had seen him in years, maybe ever. The divorce had been finalized in March. He never talked about Ashley unless I asked. I did not ask often. Richard and Patricia Crawford sat at one of the employee tables near the back. They had been working at Washington Organic Farms for 11 months now, showing up early, staying late, doing everything I asked, and more. Richard managed the agricultural operations like he had been born to it. Patricia handled business operations with an attention to detail that saved us thousands in efficiency improvements. They lived in the cottage on the property, paid their bills, visited Barbara at the Better County facility twice a week. They were rebuilding, slowly, carefully, earning back what their daughter's actions had cost them. When they saw me enter, they both stood, nodded respectfully. I nodded back. We had a professional relationship now built on mutual respect and clear boundaries. They worked hard. I paid them fairly. They never asked for more than they earned. I never gave less than they deserved. The gala followed its usual pattern: cocktail hour, silent auction, dinner program. By 8:15, Robert Collins was at the podium making his announcements. "Tonight we have raised $560,000 for food banks and educational programs, a new record for the 35th year of this event." Applause filled the room. I clapped along with everyone else, genuinely pleased that the cause was thriving. And once again, our platinum sponsor making this entire event possible with a donation of $100,000, the Washington Family Foundation. More applause. People turned to look at me, smiling, acknowledging. Different than last year. Last year they did not know who I was. This year, everyone knew. The story had made me famous in a way I never wanted, but had learned to accept. Samuel Washington will now address us and share the Foundation's new initiatives. I walked to the podium. The room quieted immediately. They remembered what happened last year in this room. They remembered the education, the expose, the consequences. They were wondering what I would say this time. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here and for supporting these vital community programs. I paused, looked out at the crowd. Last year, I had to teach a difficult lesson in this room. A lesson about assumptions, about racial stereotypes, about the danger of using people's lives as content without understanding them. That lesson needed to be taught, and I do not regret teaching it. The room was silent, attentive. But this year I want to talk about what I have learned. Because education goes both ways. I taught a lesson, yes. But I also learned something important in the aftermath. I clicked the remote. A slide appeared behind me showing a timeline of black farmers in America from 1920 to 2020. For 76 years I have watched black wealth be invisible to people who think poverty has a color. I have watched successful black families be dismissed, underestimated, assumed to be struggling simply because we do not display our success the way mainstream culture expects. The next slide showed a photo of my father standing in front of the barn in 1952. My father bought this land in 1952 when black farmers were being systematically driven out of Georgia through violence, intimidation, and discriminatory lending practices. He paid $6,000 for 180 acres that white farmers did not want. He built this barn with his own hands. He planted crops that people said would fail. And he taught me the most important lesson of my life. I paused for effect. Build quietly, help silently, prove nothing to nobody. The next slide showed 3 generations of Washington men. My grandfather, my father, me. That invisibility protected us. When you are black in America, showing off your wealth makes you a target, makes you vulnerable to jealousy, to violence, to systems designed to take from you what you managed to accumulate. So we learned to hide it, to dress modestly, to drive old trucks, to live in houses that did not announce our success. That survival strategy kept us safe. I clicked to the next slide. A montage of headlines from the past year. All the articles, think pieces, discussions about my story and what it revealed about assumptions about black wealth. But that invisibility also allows stereotypes to flourish. When successful black people hide their success, it becomes easier for others to assume we do not have any. To teach millions of people that black farmers are failures, that black families have a poverty mindset, that we need to be saved from ourselves instead of being recognized for what we actually built. I turned to face the audience fully. So I am changing strategy. Not completely. I am not going to start showing off or performing wealth for anyone's validation, but I am going to be more visible about what the black community has accomplished, more vocal about the empires we built in silence, more willing to educate rather than hide. The next slide appeared. The Hidden Empires Initiative logo designed by a black graphic artist from Atlanta. Starting January 2026, the Washington Family Foundation is launching the Hidden Empires Initiative, $5 million in funding over 5 years for young black farmers and entrepreneurs who are building wealth in their communities. Gasps rippled through the crowd. $5 million was serious money even for people used to wealth. This is not charity. This is investment. Investment in people who understand that real wealth serves the community, who know how to build without showing off, who have learned from their ancestors that survival means being underestimated until the moment you choose to reveal yourself. The next slide showed the program details. The initiative will provide capital mentorship and resources to black business owners under 40 who are creating generational wealth in agriculture, technology, real estate, and community development. Mentorship will come from successful black business owners who built their wealth quietly and are now willing to share what they learned. I clicked to the final slide, a quote from my father in his own handwriting, something I had found in his papers after he died. Success is not what people see. Success is what you leave behind, because our children should not have to hide their success to feel safe. They should not have to choose between visibility and security. They should be able to build empires and claim them proudly, knowing that their community will protect them instead of their silence protecting them from their community. I closed the laptop, unplugged it from the projector. That is the lesson I learned from last year, from watching my story become national news, from seeing how many people did not know that black farmers like me existed, that black wealth is real even when it is invisible, that we have been building empires for generations. I stepped back from the podium. The Hidden Empires Initiative launches January 15, 2026. Applications will be available through the Washington Family Foundation website. If you know young black entrepreneurs who are building something real, send them our way. We want to help them grow without having to hide anymore. The room exploded in applause, standing ovation even louder than last year. But this time it was not about consequences or justice. It was about hope, about possibility, about turning last year's painful lesson into this year's positive action. I returned to my table. Lawrence came over immediately, Keisha beside him. Dad, that was incredible. $5 million. It is money that needs to be spent, I said simply, on people who deserve it, on a future where black kids can be proud of what their families built instead of having to hide it. The gala continued. Dinner, more speeches, the silent auction. But the energy had shifted. People kept approaching me, wanting to talk about the initiative, asking how they could support it, sharing stories of their own experiences with invisible wealth and assumptions based on race. Around 10, after most of the formal program was over, Richard Crawford approached my table carefully. Mr. Washington, could I speak with you for a moment? Of course, Richard, I gestured to the empty seat. Lawrence and Keisha had gone to look at the silent auction items. Richard sat down looking older than his 58 years, but healthier than when I hired him back. That speech tonight, that was powerful. Thank you. He hesitated, then continued. You asked me once to teach my daughter that black success comes in many forms. I wanted you to know that I am trying. How is Ashley doing? I had not asked in months. Did not want to know unless there was a reason to know. Richard took a breath. She is learning. Slowly. Painfully. She works retail now at a department store in Athens. Makes $14 an hour. Lives in a studio apartment. Takes the bus because she had to sell the BMW. I nodded, listening. And the influencer career gone. Completely gone. She cannot get brand deals. Her follower count never recovered. Every time she tries to post anything, the comments remind her of what she did. She gave up trying 6 months ago. Deleted all her social media. She is just trying to survive now. Richard looked at me directly. She asked me to tell you that she understands now. What she did. Why it was wrong. What it cost. Understands what specifically I asked. Because understanding I was rich is not the same as understanding why using racial stereotypes was wrong. Richard nodded. She said, and these are her words, that she mistook your humility for weakness, your simplicity for poverty, that she saw a black man living modestly and assumed it meant failure because she had been taught that success has to look a certain way, and that using racial stereotypes to build her brand, even if she did not think that was what she was doing, caused real harm to real people, that millions learned to see black families as failures because of her content. He paused. She also said that she is sorry. Truly sorry. Not sorry she got caught. Sorry that she did it at all. I sat with that for a moment. Good, I finally said. That is a start. Richard waited clearly, hoping I would say more. Would say I forgave her or wanted to see her or something that offered closure. But understanding and changing are different things, I continued. She understands now because she faced consequences, because she lost everything. The question is whether she would have understood without those consequences, whether she is actually different or just scared. I looked at Richard. Time will tell. Maybe in a few years, if she has built a life based on actual understanding instead of fear, maybe then we can talk. But not now. Now she needs to live with what she did, learn from it, become someone different than who she was. Richard nodded slowly. That is fair. More than fair. How are you and Patricia doing? I asked, changing the subject. Good. Really good. The work at the farm, it is honest work. Good work. We feel like we are contributing to something real, something that matters. And Mom Barbara, the better facility, made such a difference. She has activities now, better food nurses who have time to actually care. We visit twice a week. She is doing as well as can be expected at 88. I am glad to hear it. Richard stood up to leave, then turned back. Mr. Washington, thank you. For the second chance. For seeing us as separate from what Ashley did. For letting us earn our way back. We will never take it for granted. See that you do not, I said. But Richard, you have earned it. Both of you. 11 months of showing up, working hard, proving I made the right choice. That matters. He nodded, eyes wet, and walked back to his table where Patricia was waiting. I sat alone watching the gala wind down, watching people dance, laugh, celebrate, watching the community come together to support causes that mattered. 1 year ago, I stood at that podium and destroyed someone's life to teach a lesson about consequences. Tonight, I stood at that same podium and announced a $5 million initiative to help young Black entrepreneurs build their own empires. Both were necessary. Both were justice. One punished wrong, the other supported right. That was the balance I had been looking for. Not just consequences for those who did harm, but opportunities for those who did good. Not just lessons about what not to do, but examples of what to do instead. The Hidden Empires Initiative would be my legacy. Not the $58 million agricultural empire I built in silence, but the platform I created for the next generation to build theirs without having to hide. My father would have been proud. Build quietly, he always said. Help silently. Prove nothing to nobody. I had done all of that, and now finally I was ready to do something else. Build proudly. Help publicly. Prove that Black wealth is real, powerful, and worthy of being seen. The education was complete. The new chapter was beginning, and I was ready for whatever came next. Present day, November 2025. I am sitting at the same wooden desk my father built in 1952. Same chair that has held 4 generations of Washington men. Same ledger books, leather-bound and worn, filled with decades of handwritten numbers that tell the story of everything we built. I am adding up this year's harvest numbers by hand. Pencil and paper. Column after column of figures. Crop yields, market prices, distribution costs, profit margins. The satisfying scratch of graphite on paper, the simple mathematics of agriculture that has not changed in centuries, even as everything else has. People ask me why I still write in ledgers, why I still drive the 1988 Ford F-150, why I never showed off the money even after the world found out about it. They ask it genuinely curiously, like they really want to understand. The answer is simple, even if the history behind it is not. My father taught me that real wealth is not what you show. It is what you do when nobody is watching. It is the families you house in affordable rentals when banks refuse them mortgages. It is the kids you send to college through foundation scholarships they never know came from you. It is the communities you feed through organic farms that prioritize nutrition over profit margins. All of it done without putting your name on buildings or demanding recognition or needing the world to validate what you built. That is wealth, not the number in the bank account, though that matters, not the properties you own, though those matter too, but the lives you change, the opportunities you create, the dignity you preserve for people who might otherwise have none. I close the ledger for October and open the one for November. Start a new page, date at the top, first entry. The ritual continues. Ashley thought poverty looked like old trucks and handwritten books. She thought wealth looked like BMWs and designer bags and Instagram posts about luxury lifestyles. She was wrong on both counts. Poverty is not about what you drive or what you wear. It is about having no choices, no options, no way out. Wealth is not about what you show. It is about having so many options that you can choose simplicity without it being forced on you. She confused the performance of wealth with wealth itself. Easy mistake to make in a world that teaches us to value appearance over substance. But it was still a mistake, and it cost her everything. I set down my pencil. Look around the barn office that has been my sanctuary for decades. But here is what bothers me most, what keeps me up some nights, even though justice was served and lessons were learned. She did not just mock me. She mocked what she thought Blackness meant. Poverty mindset, generational poverty in the Black community, old Black farmers hoarding land. Every video she made was not just about me. It was about all of us. Every Black family that chose to build wealth quietly. Every Black farmer who survived by being underestimated. Every Black business owner who learned that showing off was dangerous. She saw a Black man living simply and assumed he was poor because he was Black. Not because of evidence, not because of actual poverty, but because the assumption that Black equals poor is so deeply embedded in our culture that even well-meaning people make it without thinking. That assumption has been used to devalue Black success for generations, to dismiss our achievements. to explain away our wealth as luck or crime or anything except what it actually is. Hard work, smart investing, strategic patience, building empires, one property at a time, one crop at a time, one generation at a time. I stand up from the desk, walk to the window, look out at the farm that my father bought in 1952 when black farmers were being driven out of Georgia by violence and discrimination. He paid $6,000 for land that white farmers did not want. Today, it is worth tens of millions. That is not luck. That is vision. Wealth in the black community has always been hidden, had to be. When showing off could get you killed, when success made you a target, when the only way to keep what you built was to pretend you had not built anything at all. That survival strategy worked. It kept us safe. It let us accumulate while being dismissed and underestimated. But maybe it is time to be visible, not to show off. Not to prove anything to people who will never understand anyway. But to show young black kids that we have always been here. Building empires, feeding communities, creating generational wealth. Quietly, powerfully, successfully. The Hidden Empires Initiative is my way of making that visibility real. $5 million saying to the next generation, you do not have to hide anymore. You do not have to choose between safety and pride. You can build something and claim it. You can be successful and visible. You can prove that black wealth is not an exception or an accident, but a tradition that goes back generations. I close the ledger book, turn off the desk lamp, walk toward the barn door. Outside, the farm spreads out before me. Not the old rundown operation Ashley filmed for her poverty content, but the reality. Modern tractors parked near the new storage facility. Solar panels on the processing building catching the afternoon sun. Workers in Washington, organic farms, uniforms loading trucks for tomorrow's deliveries. The infrastructure of a $58 million agricultural empire that feeds thousands of families every week. The old farm was always the cover, the protection, the camouflage that let us build in peace while the world assumed we were struggling. But the cover is off now. The world knows. And maybe that is okay. Maybe that is even good. Because somewhere out there, a young black kid is learning that success does not have to look white, that wealth can be quiet and still be real, that their grandfather's old truck might be parked in front of a mansion their grandfather chose not to build because he understood that real power does not need monuments. 4 generations of Washington men sat at that desk in that barn. 4 generations who understood that wealth is not what you show, it is what you build, what you protect, what you pass down. The 5th generation is coming. Lawrence and Keisha are talking about kids, about what they will teach them, about how to balance pride and safety, visibility and protection in a world that is changing but not changed enough. They will figure it out, just like we did, just like our ancestors did, because that is what Washington men do. We build empires in the shadows until the moment comes to step into the light. And when we do, the whole world better be ready to see what we have been building all along. Ashley was right about one thing. Generational wealth is real. But she did not understand what it actually means. It is not about the car you drive or the clothes you wear. It is not about showing off or proving your worth to strangers on the internet. Real generational wealth is teaching your children to build something bigger than themselves. It is showing them that success does not need an audience. It is proving that humility and power can coexist. My father bought this land in 1952 with money he saved from sharecropping. He never owned a new car, never ate at fancy restaurants, never wore a suit that cost more than $50. But he sent 3 kids to college, helped 12 families buy their first homes, fed half the county during bad harvest years. That is generational wealth, not the money you have, the lives you change, not what you take from the world, what you give back to it. Ashley learned this lesson the hard way. Character is not built on camera. It is built in the quiet moments when nobody is watching. And true wealth serves others. Always has. Always will. The Washington Family Foundation has provided over $8.7 million in scholarships, housing assistance, and community support to families in Greene County since 2010. The Hidden Empires Initiative launched in January 2026 and has funded 47 Black-owned businesses in its first year. This work continues today. If this story taught you something about assumptions, humility, or the real meaning of wealth, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more stories about people who built empires in silence and spoke only when it mattered, because some lessons are too important to keep quiet.